everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I am Jen. This is Fundy Fridays, and here on my channel I talk about different aspects of Christian fundamentalism, American conservative politics, pop culture, and gay stuff. And today is not going to be gay or fun. Today is going to be really shocking and horrific. So, content warning, I will give another one before we get really into it later. But major content warning for child sexual abuse, because today we are going to be talking about Kanakuk Christian Sports Camp, located in good old southern Missouri. And this is a Christian sports camp. It is the largest of its kind. They have reportedly served over 500,000 campers in the lifetime of the camp. Kanakuk camps are not just in Missouri, and usually it's under K-Life or Camp Out. All of these words that you would want spelled with a C are spelled with a K. Yeah. They have branches in Colorado and in Texas and in Arkansas. So you may have had a run-in with one of these camps or one of these K-Life groups. You may have been in college and been recruited to go work at Kids Across America.
Or maybe you're familiar with the Kanakuk Institute.
You may have seen Joe White give his famous crosstalk where he will build a cross, like he'll carry the beam in and build the cross in front of everyone and tell this big dramatic story. But yes, we're going to be talking about pretty horrifying, traumatic things today. That's what I'm here for. This is a Missouri institution that I would like to see fall in my lifetime because it has become a literal playground for predators. Before I begin, I would like to thank the Jennonites who reached out to me to tell me their stories. I also want to thank Erin Raimondi, who we interviewed for the missionary episode, because she covered Kanakuk on TikTok several months ago, and it was the inspiration for this episode. And of course, mine took a really long time. This episode is massive. The script is 90 pages. We're going to cover a lot because I want to discuss as much as I can about this place because there's just so much going on. I also want to thank Facts About Kanakuk. You can go to factsaboutkanakuk.com. They are a whistleblower advocacy group for survivors of Kanakuk abuse, and they are anonymous, which makes a lot of sense because Kanakuk, they are very quick to sue, although right now I don't know if they will be doing any suing because they are involved in several of their own lawsuits. No More Victims LLC is the group behind Facts About Kanakuk. They launched their website in April of 2021 and has since received over 60 reports of sexual abuse incidents at Kanakuk spanning from the 1950s to 2022. And we're going to talk about the main ones. We're going to talk about Pete Newman. I'm going to try my best to not give you excruciating detail, but we're going to have to talk about some of it. But he was not the first, and he probably will not be the last because the owner of Kanakuk and the main guy for everything, Joe White, defends these perverts in court, and he lets them live at the camps when they're awaiting trial. And then he goes on and defends them, and he hides stuff. He hid for over 10 years reports of children being abused at his camp. And he's going to tell you that it's the safest place on earth and that nothing bad will ever happen. Please give him more money. Editing Jen here. You're going to see a lot of me today. I just wanted to say I am not at all casting judgment on anyone who's ever worked or volunteered at Kanakuk, anyone who's ever attended Kanakuk. I am not mad at you. I don't think you're complicit in abuse. I think if you worked at Kanakuk, you were just doing your best and you were trying to give those kids the best summer of their life, and I am not mad at you at all. Now, if you participated in some of the racist stuff, that's not okay, but just a general statement of I am not mad at anyone who's ever worked there. I am not judging any of you. The people that we should be mad at, the people we need to be holding accountable, people who are responsible are a very specific set of individuals, and we will be going over that a little bit later in the video. Growing up, I would see my fellow classmates come back from summer vacation wearing Kanakuk shirts, and I always wondered what it was, but I figured it was a regular camp. I didn't think anything of it. And once I started diving into this world of fundamentalism and evangelicalism and this whole culture and community, and like really started paying attention to the stuff in my own state, is when I started noticing like Kanakuks everywhere. I was recently at an estate sale and somebody had a Kanakuk sticker on their car. I've been down to Springfield quite a few times, and so I've just been on this like quest to cover the horrible religious things that happen in Missouri. And if you've noticed on our channel, we have a playlist called Missouri Business, and that's a play on misery business. And that's also something that if you've grown up in Missouri, you've definitely heard that or made that joke before.
The joke that being in Missouri is being in misery. You get it.
So yeah, let me hop on a map here and show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so this is Missouri. It's an interesting place. I want to know if anybody else growing up in the Midwest learned about Meemaw. I'm going to zoom out. Meemaw is Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana. And as you can see here, here's the hat, here's the face, here's the shirt, here's the pants, and here's the leg. And so Meemaw is like a gnome. Like he makes that shape. So I don't know. I just thought it was cute. Anybody else know about Meemaw? Missouri's special because it's Midwest, but it's also like got a lot of Southern ideologies. Very Republican, very, very Christian. I mean, literally the Missouri Compromise was allowing us to join the Union and be a slave state. Anyway, okay, so this is Missouri. This is Kansas City, and there is Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas City, Kansas. You may have heard of Kansas City because of Harrison Butker and Travis Kelce. The Kansas City Chiefs. Watch James's video. That's over here. Kansas City's great. Love Kansas City.
Fun fact, Don Cheadle is from Kansas City, and also so is the church, the International House of Prayer, which I have done several videos about. I highly recommend you check them out. Interesting fact about IHOP is that Mo Hart actually used to attend that church and went to conversion therapy there. So, small world.
I did this ministry called the International House of Prayer, IHOP, where they do 24/7 prayer. And I did this internship called One Thing out of Psalms 27. And they said, well, tell us your story, your testimony. And so I was like, I struggled with homosexuality, and they call it SSS or whatever, same-sex attraction bullshit.
Oh.
And so it was just all of this BS. So then I did that, and then I went to the 6-month intensive one, and then I was leading that
With
one.
the 6-month intensive one.
It was, that one was called Living Waters.
This is Jefferson City. This is our capital. That's where they take away our rights.
On a happier note, it's also the site of Melissa Etheridge's 2003 music video for the song Breathe.
We know all about St. Louis. St. Louis, Hunter Gex, Slater.
John Goodman actually narrates the little movie that you watch at the St. Louis Aquarium. James would be mad at me if I didn't mention that Randy Orton is also from St. Louis.
Okay, so I totally went on a rabbit hole finding out different famous people from Missouri, so it's kind of jarring that we're going from Randy Orton to Maya Angelou, but here we are.
Missouri has quite the legacy. And don't worry, we'll get to him someday soon.
Sedalia is where they have the state fair every year. I went to a Girl Scout thing there once. It was called the Rendezvous, and we all made little crafts and trinkets, and you'd trade them with people. Cape Girardeau, they have Southeast Missouri State. I went there for the eclipse. This right here is the Lake of the Ozarks, and that is where the show Ozark is set in. It is dangerous as fuck. Those waters will kill you. Don't play around with your safety in the Lake of the Ozarks. Down here in Humansville and Stockton, that's where the Troubled Teen Industry Homes, Agape, and Circle of Hope. I might cover those places someday too. Horrific abuse going on at those places, and that's over here in southern Missouri. Even farther down, we have Joplin. It was Mother's Day in 2011, and they had a F5 tornado go through, and it just completely pulverized the town. Lots of people died. If you're from Missouri or like from this intersection here with like Oklahoma, like A lot of people have family who have been affected by it. It always makes me really upset because I'm fucking terrified of tornadoes. But anyway, right next to Joplin is Carthage, which of course is where the Precious Moments Museum is. It really starts to turn into the Ozark Mountains down here in southern Missouri, northwest Arkansas. And James and I went down to northwest Arkansas for our honeymoon and got all up in those hills, and it was fucking terrifying also. Rickety, tiny little gravel roads up in these mountains, and nothing but cliffside. Little tiny one-lane bridges. It's crazy down there. Down here in the very, very bottom is Branson, and that's also where Silver Dollar City is, which is a big, like, pioneer-themed theme park. Branson's like a touristy town. It's very family oriented and like Christian themed. I'm trying to be nice here if anybody happens to be from Branson. Branson's got charm. Branson is very camp, but it's no glitz and glamour, okay? It's very rustic. Up here, a little like an hour and a half from Branson, is Springfield.
Springfield is home to James River Church, the same place that had the bizarre men's conference that Mark Driscoll got kicked out of.
And that is the third biggest city in Missouri, besides St. Louis, Kansas City. And that is where Crystal Method is from. They also have a college there, Missouri State. But right outside of Springfield is Willard, which is where Chapel Roan is from. So that's Missouri for you. But I bring all this up to tell you at the very, very bottom of Missouri is Branson, and Kanakuk is in the country side of the Branson area.
Okay, so for future reference, if we start in Springfield, which is several hours away from where even I live because Missouri is huge. If you start there and head to Branson, which is where the main Kanakuk camp is, it's also where they have the Kanakuk Institute, K Country, K7, and Link Year. Well, a little bit to the west of that, you have Lampy, or Lamp. I've never been there. And that is where they have K2, K West, and the Worldview camp. And then all the way by themselves in Golden is where they have Kids Across America, which is their, how do I put this? Segregated camp for urban youth. Don't worry, we'll get to them in a minute.
All right, since there is no Wikipedia page for Kanakuk, I found all of the biographical information about this place on a random, like truly random blog. And so here we go. Here's how it began. It was in the year 1926 when C.L. Ford decided to start a camp, and he originally called it Cugahoe Camp. As we know it this day, it had changed its name and become known as Kanakuk Camps. Spike White then joined the Kanakuk camp. This is a tongue twister. The following year, Coach Bill Lance became the director of Cugahoe Camp and made the move to change its name into Kanakuk Camp. Lance was also the one who instilled the Foursquare and I'm Third Christian doctrines. More on that in a minute. In 1934, Kanakuk Kamps was officially under the ownership of Coach Bill Lance. The camp has transferred ownership in the year 1955 when it was bought by Spike and Darnell White.
That's Joe White's parents, by the way, and it confused me for quite a bit because I couldn't figure out who Spike and who Darnell was. Darnell is apparently a unisex name, and that's his mom's name. I thought Spike was his mom because of Degrassi, but I guess Spike is the dad and Darnell is the mom. So there you go, gender roles.
In 1958, Spike and Darnell decided to make things more exciting. Thus, they started Kanakomo Camp, which is exclusively for girls. It wasn't long when the camp had to be in the hands of a new set of owners again, in the person of Joe and Debbie Joe White, as The purchased it in 1976. Kanakuk Camp was repackaged then as K2 Camp, which accepted teenage campers in 1978. The next year, it started the K-Life, which is a ministry of teen mentoring. The success of these camps prompted the owners to open K West Camp, which is also for teenage campers, in 1983. 5 years later, preteen campers were also accepted into Camp K Country in the early 90s. Kanakuk Camps had opened Kids Across America and K7, respectively, for the urban youth and for preteen and teenage campers. But on the Kanakuk website, it says Kanakuk began with a group of Texas boys, which Joe White is from Texas, trekking to the Ozarks for 8 weeks of character and confidence building, alongside great Christian role models. After nearly a century, Kanakuk has grown to be one of the nation's largest Christian athletic summer camps.
So in 1926, this dream was born to build a summer camp in the Ozark Mountains to develop young men into strong Christian leaders with strong Christian character and rugged physique. Because a boy is the only thing God can use to make a man.
Weird.
The dream increased like a steady flowing river that transformed the lives of dozens, then hundreds, then thousands, then tens and hundreds of thousands of youth from across America and around the world. A huge milestone was planted in 1958 when the first girls' camp was built, and an equally important quest to train young women of faith and biblical conviction spread like a raging wildfire. An unquenchable heart to evangelize and equip the next generation to reach the world for Christ poured fuel on the flame until the original camp in Branson fostered campsite after campsite along the shores of Table Rock and Taneycomo Lakes. In 1978, K2 opened the gates to reach and train 1,800 teenagers. In 1983, K-West began, which inaugurated 2-week terms for 1,300 middle school campers. In 1988, K-Country began with intentional biblical training for 1,100 younger campers, and then in 1992, K7 opened their gates to 2,800 one-week campers.
It blows us away every year we come back here and listen to Joe and listen to the leaders speak and to imagine that they're getting that message every day.
I may have requested a free brochure from Kanakuk, maybe, allegedly, because it was free. And I also was like, I don't have a P.O. box, so I just gave them my address. And that was kind of a bad choice, maybe, because I'm probably going to get a shitload of Kanakuk mail forever. But I was like, they're probably going to sue me anyway, so they're going to find my address regardless. So the other thing, so I requested a free brochure, okay? And I gave them a fake name. I said my name was Bob LaPunch, okay? They sent me a packet. They sent me the packet addressed to Bob LaPunch. And it was handwritten. I gave a fake name because I thought it was going to be like somebody's going to, at the very most, have to print out a label. They handwrote Bob LaPonge. You think I would have learned my lesson after the whole Kenneth Copeland Ministries thing and the like giant stack of Victory magazines I have, but no, I wanted stuff. And they sent me a fucking sticker, which I'm not going to put it on anything because fuck Kanakuk. But it's the same sticker I saw on that person's car at the estate sale. Thanks for your interest in Kanakuk summer camps. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. We hope to see your kiddo at camp. Kanakuk registration team. What? Marshall is my child. Should I sign him up? I would never let my son go to this fucking camp. All right, so Joe White. He's very terrible. I couldn't find his birthday. Which is something that I would find on a Wikipedia page if there was one. He's very weird, and we'll get into his influences because they're kind of fucked up. Like James Dobson from Focus on the Family, notorious terrible person. He gave this quote about Joe White that you see on everything. Joe White knows more about teenagers than anyone in North America. Does he know how to keep them safe? No, he does not. Joe's journey to the heart of Jesus has led him through challenges and experiences that have enriched his life and strengthened his faith. With the love of a friend, Joe's heart for others to discover a relationship with Jesus influences his actions each day. He was a football coach, and he also played nose tackle for the SMU Mustangs before coaching the defensive line at Texas A&M. In 2009, SMU honored Joe as an outstanding alumni and emerging leader. Joe has been awarded 2 honorary doctoral degrees and has written more than 20 books. He's also been named one of the top 10 influencers of the century by New Man magazine. Congratulations. Joe and his wife, Debbie Joe, reside in Branson, Missouri. Joe White has dedicated his life to serving and equipping next-generation leaders across the nation and even around the world. While he's not spending time at camp, Joe travels as a national speaker for women's and men's conferences, professional sports teams, and more.
He has started international outreaches such as Kanakuk, Haiti, and Kanakuk, Lebanon. Authored over 20 books about leadership, faith training, and navigating the struggles of everyday life. In his speaking and writing, White often attributes success to two significant figures in his life, work, and ministry, Bill Gothard and Jack Hershend. Both men have been the subject of multiple lawsuits for committing or facilitating sexual abuse in a Christian setting. Other close friends and mentors whom Joe claims include Gary Smalley and James Dobson of Focus on the Family.
Yeah, isn't there multiple Bible verses about the company you keep and, you know, what your friends say about you? In Joe White's book, he actually talks about getting saved at a Bill Gothard seminar. The greatest journey of my life began in 1974 at a Bill Gothard conference in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I don't remember many things the lecturer said, but I will never forget his exhortation to memorize and meditate on God's word, chapter by chapter, book by book.
Also, is he saying that he wasn't even paying attention to what Bill Gothard said? It didn't matter. It was about the personality. It was about the control. It was never about Bill Gothard having good ideas, which he had zero of. From conservative journalist Nancy French, comparing Bill Gothard to Joe White because they both believed that you could quote-unquote fix a predator by marrying them off, which is interesting to think about.
So in order to celebrate this day like we do at camp, I got up this morning with my little daughter and with help from my grandson Dax, and we made some hot Kanakuk coffee cake.
I need you guys to know that ever since I came across this clip, I have been walking around the house saying, Kanakuk coffee cake. Kanakuk coffee cake. You have to do the lip smack too. Kanakuk coffee cake.
Don't want to make you jealous, but makes me excited for camp. Not only on Sunday morning is Kanakuk known for his coffee cake, but also for the I'm Third story.
So this Kanakuk coffee cake thing is a tradition apparently at Kanakuk. I mean, Michael W. Smith is is down to eat some, and there was a recipe posted to the Kanakuk alumni Facebook page. I think I could make that. Didn't seem too hard. I've been experimenting in the baking realm lately. Sounds good. You gotta call it something else. Like, why is everything gotta have K's? You know, and I don't want to, you know, bring the vibe down, but we do have a presence of the KKK in this state, so it's a bad image.
Some hot Kanakuk coffee cake.
And the lip smacking, it's very Joe Biden, you know? Can you imagine? Joe White is the Waluigi. And Joe Biden is the Wario.
Joe White sure is a character, man. And when he's not making a safe space for predators at his Christian sports camp, he is a traveling speaker. And he frequently works with Promise Keepers. And his famous speech that he gives is one called Crosstalk, and he will sometimes bring in the beam itself, but he will build a cross with these really long nails and kind of carry the cross on his back. You know, you get it. The metaphor becomes real. And then in his older age, he's been having people help him pick the cross up, but you get the picture. I wanted to show you a compilation of the best of these crosstalks because I watched a lot of them, and sometimes they are absolutely nutty.
There's a growing darkness in our land. A darkness that conceals the turbulent tides that swirl and rage around us. Like the restless sea, we are pounded by an enemy who wants to destroy the very ground we stand on, then destroy us. These are turbulent tides. They are physical and spiritual.
Tragedy struck again today as a lone gunman opened fire on the latest government figures show an increase in rape on college campuses. Hate crimes top the news again
Religious
tonight.
group says all roads lead to heaven and rejects
A
scripture.
battered wife tells her story of pain, deception.
As divorce statistics rise, children are paying the price.
These are dangerous tides. They will destroy us unless unless we look to the one who is more powerful than the tides that surround us, the Creator, the real master of the universe, our only hope. As with stopping the ocean tides, our human effort is powerless. But through His power, His strength, His incredible grace, we can turn the tide.
You gotta have it today. He goes up with the two thieves from Hebron. Barbarians. Scum of the earth barbarians.
Yeah, like chainsaws, right? And it's like the louder the better.
Where are you, Dad? Where's my father? I will never give in. I will never, ever quit. You can beat me, you can ridicule me, you can insult me, you can crucify me, you can even kill me. But I have been and I will always be my own man.
Jesus, the only name. Your love is why I came. You'll never be the same.
And a chainsaw also has a higher purpose. So it is with us. You know, men were created for a purpose. We were created to eat and to marry, perhaps, and to have children, and to live and to die, and that's our purpose.
Claiming to be God. That's a mouthful, you know, claiming to be God, being a man.
That God wants to be your daddy. Chainsaws can be very artistic.
A leaf was born, sin's hold was torn, demons would mourn, God's plan unfolding. One tiny sprout, angels would shout, God's will, no doubt, God's plan unfolding.
Today you shall be with me in paradise. You're my son now. Jesus, Jesus, could you remember me when you come into your kingdom?
Unfortunately, it's not all boxing and daddy issues. In 2015, Joe White spoke at Liberty University's Convocation. Joe gave his famous crosstalk and then went on a side tangent telling a story about a girl who supposedly told them that she was sexually assaulted and filmed while she was a minor. And I don't know if the story is true. It doesn't matter, because the conclusion that Joe came to was that if she gives her heart to Jesus, then she can have her purity restored. It's pretty horrifying, and keep it in mind when we start to discuss the cover-up of sexual abuse that was happening at Kanakuk. This is the guy whose judgment we were all depending on.
She said, when I was 17, they filmed me. The boys in the high school set me up, and they took my clothes off, and they raped me, and they filmed me, and they made me porn. They made me porn. And I'll tell you, men, there's about 1 million reasons why I hate porn. For some stupid pleasure to pay off the sex trafficking group that they represent, the ones who do the porn. There she was, a victim of porn. And I remember taking my little love letter out of my back pocket. I remember carrying this thing for like 35 years, and it opens to 2 Corinthians 5 in the 21st verse. And I just said, Maggie, look. I said, baby, it says right here in the love letter from Jesus, it says that God made Jesus, who knew no sin, become porn. I said, Maggie, he became rape. He became all the cutting and stuff that you've been going through and all the other stuff that's happened to you since that night. I said, Maggie, he became all of that so that you could become the righteousness of Christ in him. And I said, Maggie, do you know what that means? And her eyes are starting to open up, and they're beautiful brown eyes, and her countenance lifts. And she's like, what? And I said, Maggie, that means you're the bride of Christ. And y'all, this beautiful white veil of purity just falls out of the ceiling of that arena. No one saw it, but Maggie did. She saw it. It was so beautiful watching this veil of purity fall on that precious little girl's face as she received the grace and the virginity and the purity of Christ over everything in her body. And I'll tell you, it was the most beautiful bridal walk I've ever seen in my life. As little Maggie walked out of that arena dressed in the purity and clothing of Christ.
Joe White has sort of made a name for himself as the teen purity guy. I mean, remember James Dobson said he's the authority on teens. And speaking of both Joe White and Liberty University, there was controversy in 2017 when Ignite, a weekend Christian conference that expects to attract some 10,000 men to Liberty University next month, is now drawing criticism for including on their speakers list accused rapist and NFL quarterback Ben Roethlisberger. And Dr. Joe White, fake doctor, president of Kanakuk Kamps, who was being sued for covering up sexual abuse of boys. And this was back in 2017. And I have seen several reports from past campers who said they attended daily sermons at Kanakuk, and the girls had a special purity lesson. Because of course they did. And not only were they shaming girls for their modesty levels, at a summer camp with pool activities where everybody is already kind of showing skin anyway, and I'm not judging them for this, I'm just pointing out a double standard I saw, because there was so much footage of shirtless little boys, and I think for their son's safety alone, everyone should be in a rash guard and full sleeves, but that's besides the point. At Kanakuk, girls aren't just told that their bodies are a stumbling block, but I also heard that there were purity ceremonies where sometimes Joe White himself would give girls roses as a token of their virginity. And none of these activities were signed off on by campers' parents. And I certainly wouldn't want Joe White anywhere near any of my children or their so-called purity. Kanakuk is just so interesting to me. Like, what does sports and water parks have to do with Jesus? I think it's just truly that Christians want their own stuff so that they don't have to interact with secular culture. Plus, Kanakuk entities make millions of dollars a year, and they've been classified as a church since 2015, so all of that sweet, sweet cash is tax-free. And it can cost upwards of $6,000 for just a few weeks of camp. And what's with their logo? Like, I guess I can piece together Christian plus running, because they do Christian sports. Maybe there's a story I'm missing. I don't know, it all just seems kind of blasphemous to me. Maybe it has something to do with the I'm third principle, which is definitely a ripoff of the JOY acronym, you know, Jesus first, others second, yourself last. Well, at Kanakuk, it's I'm third. And so everything they do is the I'm third way. Like, they really thought that they popped off with that one, right? And in some respects they did. There's even the I'm Third Foundation, which I'm pretty sure is just rebrand of Kids Across America, but we'll talk about that in just a second. The I'm Third thing is just so confusing to me, and it seems very problematic. Like, you need to look out for yourself, and especially at a place like Kanakuk, it just gives me the ick to think that they're telling people that they aren't important, and I'm sure that affects their self-esteem. Oh, and you're about to hear Joe White speak for the first time in this video, and he's a little weird. He's scary, you could say. And yes, his shirt does say Top Cuck.
So it was during the 1940s that the father of Kanakuk, Uncle Bill Lance, was giving a message one Sunday morning called I'm Third. And there was a young 9-year-old boy named Johnny Ferrier who was listening to the talk. And Johnny, like the kids I get to work with at K2, every day he heard it. And he did it, and he became I'm third. It was God first for Johnny. It was the other person second. It was I'm third. Johnny grew up to become a Kanakuk counselor. He was a running back at Colorado State University and the finest of our finest men. Then one day, Johnny joined the Air Force, and he got to fly the F-86 Sabre jet. Johnny made it through the war, and he became a part of what was called the Minutemen, a team of 4 jet pilots, the best of the best. And then one fateful day, Johnny and his F-86 were in an air show in Dayton, Ohio, flying over about 100,000 people at the national air races at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base there in Ohio. Then at 7,000 feet, the planes broke off into their favorite maneuver called the fleur-de-lis. Johnny, out on the right end of the arm at 7,000 feet, immediately realized he was in trouble. The rudder had locked in the flight, and in the turn, his plane began to dive, and coincidentally, he was diving into a little house where a woman and a little boy were standing watching the show outside of their picture window. And then she said at the last minute, somehow he pulled it up and he placed it there, and she pointed to a gaping, smoky hole in the garden behind her house, the only place in the town where Johnny could have put the plane without killing anybody, except, of course, himself. The backstory is 3 times Johnny was commanded to bail out. 3 times he pushed the smoke button to his commander saying, I hear you, I understand the command, but I'm not going to let my plane crash in that house. Johnny held the stick, and with his great athleticism and his dedication to Christ, Johnny pulled the plane up with the house and saved her life and gave hers. God first, others second, and I'm third has remained the Kanakuk motto for all those years.
Excuse me? I believe in the I'm third principle so you can sacrifice yourself. What? And no hate to Johnny Ferrier. He truly saved the day. He gave his life, and it's a lot to think about. That's the story that you're going to go with, and that's what you're going to teach these kids. The I'm Third Foundation is only one of a plethora of Kanakuk entities and side projects. This list is from Facts About Kanakuk, and I'm not even sure if it's the most exhaustive list. I keep finding different side quests like every day that I'm looking into this. It truly is like a hydra. But anyway, there's Kanakuk Ministries, Kanakomo Kamps, Kanakuk Alumni Foundation, Kanakuk Heritage, Kanakuk International, which is their missionary leg, and yes, they go to all the places that you would expect. Kanakuk International claims to support schools, orphan care, and nutrition outreach, partnering with the Cross International, which is another Joe White Kanakuk thing, to support Divine Shelter Schools, New Life Orphanage, and Global Orphan Project. I mean, we could just go on all day with every single country and little entity that they have. The Cross International, separate entity co-founded by Joe White in 2001, operating in alliance with Cross Catholic Outreach. Public scrutiny exists regarding the lack of transparency in the relationship between the two organizations. They have reported their financials jointly. Since inception, the Cross International has received $1.3 billion in general contributions, $1.2 billion of which were non-cash / in-kind donations, reported as being primarily medical supplies. Cross International was the 39th largest nonprofit in the U.S. in 2022. Kanakuk Institute is kind of like their fake college, and it's run by Keith Chansey, who is Joe White's best friend. He's the director of quite a few Kanakuk things, and he will come up later. The Kanakuk Institute is an 8-month college graduate discipleship program that prepares students for a lifetime of ministry through focused study on the Word of God. The Kanakuk Institute is an independent 501c3. It is $20,000 for this program, although you can get a scholarship and get the cost down to $13,000. We are committed to helping students walk in freedom in every area of their lives. This includes finances. Thus, we come alongside each of our students to help them understand good stewardship and develop financial faithfulness. With this in mind, students also have the ability to establish a payment plan in order to fulfill their tuition. Fellas, Christians, is it good stewardship to have student loans? You do not earn a degree at this school, but you do get a Certificate of Leadership and Biblical Studies. So that's great. You will be paired up with a host family, and you have to have dinner with them at least once a week. If you enjoy that, that's great, but what's with Kanakuk and making people stay at members' houses? A part of the Kanakuk Institute, you will disciple a Link Year student. Oh boy, I don't want to be late for accountability class. Also, how funny is it that you have to pay so much to go to this school that doesn't even give you a degree, and you have to do work for them? And sure, hard work can be good for the soul, but I just find it interesting that you have to do this mandatory service program. And also, please note, any payment made toward a specific student's tuition is not tax deductible. Thus, the Institute is unable to issue gift receipts or 1098-T forms for tuition. So, Kanakuk Institute gets to be tax-free, but you got to pay that tuition, honey. A few people's names who you're going to see over and over throughout this episode, like Doug Goodwin and Chris Cooper and Joe White, of course, and Keith Chansey are all involved with the Kanakuk Institute in some way, with Doug Goodwin being the president and COO of Kanakuk Ministries, has served as the Institute's board secretary for all 20 years of its existence. Chris Cooper, the former executive director of Kanakuk Ministries, served on the board for 13 years and has held the titles of chairman and president. Chris is a real piece of work, and we'll be talking about him in a little bit. Joe White, of course, the founder and CEO of Kanakuk Ministries, served on the board for 6 years. Lynn Stuckey, a Republican member of the Texas House of Representatives, has been a director for the duration of Kanakuk Institute's existence. As of 2021, Stuckey serves as the Institute's chairman of the board. In 2020, Stuckey received criticism for his failure to resign from the board, given the camp's history of covering up child sexual abuse and the camp's use of KKK acronyms. Despite Kanakuk Institute's self-disclosure as being related to Kanakuk camps, Stuckey submitted a response to the Dallas Observer that the Institute is an entirely separate entity and he has no role in what goes on at the summer camps. Joe White has donated to Stuckey's campaign since then. Some more Kanakuk entities would be AfterDark, which is a Christian concert series that mysteriously has deleted their website. Damn, if I was a Christian when this thing was going on, I totally would have went to this concert series. Undeniable hype, unprecedented hope, an unbelievable night. I know Lecrae. Do you guys know any of these other bands? Ben Rector, Need to Breathe, Social Club Misfits, Colony House, KB, Tadashi. He performs at Kids Across America a lot. After Dark is a dynamic event that travels to college campuses across the nation. Since 2000, it's been this is like solving a puzzle, unforgettable night in the lives of over 500,000 students on more than 200 campuses. Let's keep doing this. Accompanied with fantastic music from incredible artists, students will experience a powerful message. This is like a Mad Lib. From our speaker, Joe White, who had faced a heart attack, amputation, depression, and leukemia. Joe's journey of finding hope amidst the hopelessness offers a bright light in life's darkest moments. The night is a catalyst for conversation and lifelong memories to share with friends. Good grief. Unifying students from all walks of life. Our desire is that people will step away from After Dark, inspired, impacted, and reminded that no matter how dark life gets, they are not alone. Web design must be their passion. Matt Wirtz performs Wednesday night on the Clements Hall lawn at After Dark. Despite a cold October evening, SMU students crowded outside Clements Hall to watch After Dark, a show put on by SMU students starring musician Matt Wirtz and inspirational speaker Joe White. Sophomore Samantha Verrill, who has been attending Kanakuk since she was 7 years old, helped organize the event and gave some insight into the program. She explained that White speaks at every After Dark and inspires students to connect with their spirituality. He even takes the time to send personal emails to every student who attends.
My God, have any of you ever been emailed by Joe White? Verrill had nothing but great things to say about singer Matt Wertz, exclaiming, "He's probably the funniest and nicest person I ever met." Although entertainment was one of the main draws of After Dark, the main reason for the program was to inspire students. One person replied, to paraphrase, that a spiritual connection, once lost, had been reestablished after the concert. Verrill noticed that the audience reaction was definitely tangible, and the reason for such a positive reception was they saw something they always hear in a different way. Have any of you ever been to one of these? K-Life, which is a parachurch ministry within the Kanakuk Empire that seeks to disciple high school students year-round through clubs, with a K. It was founded in 1979 by Joe White and a former Kanakuk Kamps director, Richard Beach, and incorporated as a separate 501c3 nonprofit in 1991. Many former Kanakuk campers, counselors, and Kanakuk Institute graduates are hired to start, lead, and fundraise for local chapters across the U.S. And there are a lot of them in Missouri, as you would imagine. I even have one where I live. K-Life operates with a segregated model that parallels Kanakuk Camp's model of racial and socioeconomic segregation. They're referring to the fact that Kids Across America is obviously very segregated from the really nice facilities and the kind of privileged atmosphere of the regular Kanakuk camps. Chapters that target high school students in affluent areas are called K-Life, and chapters that target inner city high school students are called Urban. Urban K-Life uses a different logo than K-Life and encourages its club with a K members to attend Kids Across America camps. Urban K-Life programming includes etiquette classes and a focus on one-on-one mentoring relationships between Urban K-Life leaders and its young members. K-Life's board of directors also has significant overlap, including Doug Goodwin, who is the current president and COO of Kanakuk Kamps, and Chris Cooper, the former executive director of Kanakuk Kamps. We'll talk about them in just a minute. According to LinkedIn, Kyle Williamson is the president of K-Life Ministries. K-Life's impact on children expands beyond the Kanakuk Kamps audience. K-Life representatives visit high schools throughout the school year to interact with and recruit children who are not enrolled in Kanakuk Kamps or K-Life programming. In order to protect students, at least one school district banned K-Life representatives from visiting high schools to interact with students at cafeteria lunch tables in 2015. Some K-Life chapters have created affiliated 501c3 organizations such as Kids Life, a spinoff of K-Life in Sheridan, Wyoming, which diversifies the means by which Kanakuk/K-Life can reach children. The K-Life websites I was on, every 10 Christians who step foot on a college campus, only 2 walk off still professing to believe in Jesus. The overwhelming common denominator for the 2 out of 10 is that they had someone intentionally invest in them during their teenage years, someone like a K-Life small group leader. This is a statistic that doesn't sit well with us. Teenagers are walking onto college campuses ill-prepared to defend their faith. When a college student or young adult shares their life with a teenager and transfers spiritual truths and life experiences, they are far more likely to continue walking with Jesus through college. Now, that reminds me of the Crossbow for Teens, which was kind of like an apologetics training conference for Kanakuk teens. And it was an offshoot of Men at the Cross, which was a Joe White ministry thing. It's your typical men's conference, talk about man and men. And they had all kinds of interesting speakers, including lots of pro athletes and Ted Cunningham, who is actually the leader of Woodland Hills Family Church, which is the church that Doug Goodwin, a major player at Kanakuk, and Adam Donye, who also is the director of Lankier, all attend. They did this 1-to-1 curriculum, and you could still buy that book, I'm pretty sure. What I want to know is this Toby Mac or just some other just some other white boy? They also have a board of directors that features Doug Goodwin. We'll see him again. And they also have what they call the Wall of Credibility. So I guess these are people that are supposed to give credibility to this weird-ass conference. And yes, that is Michael W. Smith. I don't need a picture, okay? You don't have to even load the picture. I know what he looks like. Because Michael W. Smith has done a lot of promotion and endorsement of Kanakuk.
At the end of the day, it's where's your heart at, and really, why does Kanakuk even exist? The main objective here is to change a kid's life.
He's constantly in their recaps. He does concerts for them. He went to the alumni camp and hung out with Joe White. He's not the only Christian celebrity that has endorsed Kanakuk, as well as Bill Cosby, which is actually not funny. Frank Borman, commander of Apollo 8, the first manned mission to the moon, endorsed them. What a random assortment of people. Does anybody know John Tesh?
I know John Tesh.
What do you know about John Tesh?
The longtime host of a, adult soft rock radio station.
Okay, well, him and James Dobson both support Kanakuk, so...
Oh, that's sad. I like his smooth jams.
Michael W. Smith is not the only Christian musician who has played at Kanakuk or even made songs for their soundtrack. Stephen Curtis Chapman and Lecrae have all contributed to Kanakuk theme songs or the soundtrack.
You know, we're supposed to love the Lord God with our heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves. And what I take away from that is that God's first, others are second, and I'm third. Let's be third, all right?
Kanakuk, what's up? Michael W. here. I'm Third is the theme song for this year. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait to see you guys. Hey, you know what? I find that the greatest happiness in my life is when I find an opportunity to give my life away. And you know what? You can't give your life away if it's all about you.
What's up, guys? Kobe and Corey here with Dude Perfect. We wanted to tell you what I'm Third means to us. First off, Jesus first. For me, that looks like seeking Christ every single day and His will for our life, reading His Word and talking to people who know Him well.
After Jesus, others come second. For me, if that's driving through a Smoothie King drive-thru or hanging out with my wife, they come before I do.
And then lastly, we're third. That just means Jesus is first and others are second. Love you guys. Pound it. Noggin. See ya!
Hey, what's up? I'm Toby Mack, and I'm a follower of Jesus. Therefore, I listened to what he said. And when he was asked, what's the most important? He said, love God with all your heart and love others. So I try to live like this. Number one, I want to love God. Number two, I want to love others. And I'm third. That's the way I want to live.
Now, I can't say for sure that any of these musicians knew anything bad about Kanakuk or what it stood for. They were probably just trying to do something nice for the kids. However, I can probably say that about Michael W. Smith because he's been going recently, and for the last 4 years, it's been public knowledge about the sex abuse, so that is disappointing. But Michael W. Smith and Tim Tebow and Lecrae all worked with Joe White on this project. Okay, it's called Lifeline, and it's an app. It's old. Like, he hasn't updated this in a while. It's your typical daily devotional, video sermon, discipleship program. Wait a second. Light Gliders? What the hell is that?
Light Gliders is a virtual world of Christian faith, games, and community. It encourages biblical faith, positive values, and meaningful conversations among kids and families. By offering fun gameplay, wholesome, uplifting content, and a safe online community experience on computers, tablets, and smartphones, Light Gliders provides a fresh way to engage the kids you care about. Kids spend a lot of time during their formative years being shaped by video games and screen time. Light Gliders redeems this time with gameplay adventures and Bible-based activities that encourage family connections throughout the week. Invest in the faith and values of the next generation. Give kids digital playtime with a powerful purpose. Join Light Gliders today, where faith and fun come together.
Look at that. It's expensive. And it's like an app that Joe White runs. Like, he has like a bunch of sermons you can download. He especially did this one called Passion for America. And I guess I'll play a clip for you right now.
The word disciple is used in Scripture over 260 times. The word Christian is only used 3 times. America has forgotten how to make disciples. And we hope to ignite through a little iPhone app that every person that comes to the festival and everyone who sees it on the live stream and everyone who hears it about on Dr. Dobson or CBN or TBN, that they get the live Lifeline 9/11 iPhone app that has discipleship for anybody.
Interesting choice to say 9/11 iPhone app instead of 911. Anyway, here's Tim Tebow.
What's up, everybody? I'm Tim Tebow, and I get to take a couple minutes to talk about discipleship. One of my favorite things. It's one of my favorite things. It's because we're all called to be a part of it. God said, hey, go make disciples around the world. But you know what that means? Like real life talk, you know what that means? It means love the people that you're around. Care about the people that you're around. Whether it's your friend, whether it's your brother, whether it's your neighbor, you get to go care about people. You get to love people. You get to invest in people. You know, I'm so grateful that I've had so many people invest in me, love me, encourage me along the way. Whether it's been in my highs, whether it's been in my lows, people have invested in me. And you might think, well, Timmy, yeah, you're a role model. You've been blessed with the platform. So yeah, there's people that you get to go invest in. But guys, there's someone that is watching every single one of us. So we're all role models. We all have a platform. It might be your little brother, it might be a neighbor, it might be a friend, but there's someone that is watching you. There's someone that's life is being changed because you're in it. The question is it for the better? Is it for the worse? God bless you.
They really do love sports and Christianity at Kanakuk. And as a Missouri institution, it was only a matter of time before they got an endorsement from Clark Hunt, the owner of the Kansas City Chiefs.
I've often looked back at my time at Kanakuk and thought that my life could really be different had I not attended Kanakuk. My last year as a camper, I was elected chief, and that was probably the first time I had been in a leadership position like that. So as I've moved on into the business world, I look back at that time and really think that really started to prepare me for the leadership responsibilities that I've had since then. And now my wife and I are lucky enough to have 3 children, and all 3 of them have been to Kanakuk, Kanakomo, and I'm just seeing them have the same experience that I had.
Oh yeah, sports. I almost forgot what Kanakuk's original purpose was. It's really hard to when you see so many of the different businesses, ministries, concert series, light gliders, celebrity endorsements. It really makes you forget what Kanakuk is supposed to be all about. Money, Jesus. Sorry, actually, I think it's supposed to be a sports camp. I don't know. Here's a compilation of all the different camps.
Hi, I'm Matt, and this is my wife, Melissa, and we're the directors here at K1, our 2- and 4-week overnight camp for 6 to 12-year-olds here at Kanakuk.
Hi, I'm Colin Sparks, and this is my wife, Rachel, and we're the directors of K-Country, our 1-week overnight camp for ages 6 to 11 here at Kanakuk.
Hi, I'm Keith Chansey, and I'm the director of K7, our 1-week overnight camp for ages 12 to 18 years old here at Kanakuk.
Okay, dude, stop yelling at me. God, Keith Chansey's got a big old mouth on him. It reminds me of that one skit from Whitest Kids. Do it happier and with your mouth more open.
Every summer, teenage campers come to K7 to experience an action-packed sampling of all that Kanakuk has to offer during what we believe is a life-changing week of camp.
Hi, I'm Ward Wiebe, and this is my wife, Beth. We're the directors at Kanakuk K West, our 2-week overnight camp for campers ages 12 to 14 years old.
I'm Joe White, and I have been so blessed for the last 41 years to be the director here at K2. This is our teenage camp where kids come for 2 weeks or 4 weeks, because yes, there's exciting adventure, yes, there's coaching, yes, there's teaching, yes, there's countless activities, but they come here to grow deep in their relationship with Christ. So if you'll give us a chance, we'd love to show you why we think this place is the greatest 2 weeks, or perhaps the greatest 4 weeks of a teenager summer.
There are also family camps where the whole family can come and do the activities. It's not just for kids. Notably, their main family camp is K Kauai, which is Hawaiian themed, as well as Camp Out, which is a sort of traveling family camp that has branches in Arkansas and Texas. And Camp Out is officially affiliated with Woodland Hills Family Church, which is the same church that the usual suspects go to: Ted Cunningham, Adam Donier, Doug Goodwin.
Very excited here. We have Brendan here this morning talking about Kanakuk.
Yeah.
Am I saying that right?
Yes, Kanakuk.
Yeah, so tell us all about it.
Yeah, so Kanakuk is one of the premier Christian sports summer camps in the country, and we travel around to different places and put on these day camps called Camp Out.
And so tell us, one, if people are interested in it, how can they sign up for it?
Yeah, so if you go to our website, that's kanakuk.com. It's KANAKUK.com. And you can go there and you can find out all about our different camps we have. We have 6 overnight camps and 5 traveling day camps, which one is in Little Rock this week.
Oh, man, I'm seeing some video right now. I mean, it looks like these kids are having an absolute blast. I'm pretty sure I saw a foam party.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
I mean, the sports, activities, I mean, just an unbelievable time. How is it important for these kids during the summer to get out, not only have a good time, but, you know, they meet people they probably necessarily won't meet every day.
Yeah,
and socialize.
Absolutely. So 2 things. We really love kids to be able to unplug and recharge at summer camp. But then also, we feel like they're going to develop life-lasting relationships at Kanakuk. And so we love to have kids come and join our summer camps to be able to join those fun experiences.
Yeah, love it. So you were telling me something about you're making a comeback.
Yeah, so this summer, right now, we're at Little Rock Christian this week. Yep. But we're coming back to Pulaski Heights United Methodist July 30th through August 3rd. And we're really excited to be able to come back for that.
All right, gotta love it. And you're gonna have an opportunity to get out there, do a lot of cool activities. One of my favorite things to do, like low key, is like shooting bow and arrows. All right, so this is what is probably not a good idea. All right. Is my mic? Oh. Sorry, here, hold on 1 second. You know, DJ just being DJ. Just stand by. Here we go. All right. Here goes my microphone. So the good thing about this, my boss is out of town. All right?
All right.
So I'm hoping that this doesn't go through the chair. So I don't know if we can get a shot of my chair over here. Just a second. I don't know if we can get a... I need somebody. There it is. All right, you ready for this? There's a little chair over there. Let's see if it goes through it. If it goes through it, Aaron, it's on your tab, all right? 3... I hope I don't miss. All right. Does it look good?
You might be a little to the right.
Oh, Lord. Okay, I'm just going for it.
Oh! No hole?
No hole.
Nobody's hurt.
I'm not going to lie, I was aiming for the left one. Totally missed that. Hey, man, thanks so much. Kids get to sign up and have fun like this. Probably in a lot safer environment.
Yes, much safer.
Another thing that we have to talk about with this camp is the racism. And that does get put on the back pedal a lot when talking about Kanakuk because the sexual abuse is so bad, but it is very important. For example, pretty sure they just made up the name Kanakuk to sound vaguely Native American. It just seems super offensive, and it probably is. There was a real person named Kanakuk, Keannekeuk, who was a Kickapoo medicine man and a spiritual leader of the Vermilion Band of the Kickapoo Nation. He lived in east central Illinois much of his life along the Vermilion River. One source translates his name as the drunkard's son. I don't know if he wanted to be called that or not. I'm not sure. As a young man, he killed his uncle in a fit of drunken rage and was ostracized by his tribe. He wandered between frontier settlements in Indiana and Illinois begging for food until a Catholic priest took him in to teach him Christianity. Kanakuk decided to renounce alcohol and began preaching to persuade others to do the same. His people welcomed him back, and by 1816, Kanakuk, then in his mid-20s, had become a leading chief of the Vermilion Band. Within a short time, alcohol use among his followers had declined significantly, and his community became more cohesive and productive. From 1883 until his death in 1852, he was so young. He led a community of followers whose beliefs centered on nonviolence, passive resistance to resettlement, abstinence from alcohol, and meditation. He favored moderate nonviolent accommodation and coexistence within American westward expansion and settled a agricultural life. These views caused him and his followers to suffer derision and alienation from some of the other Kickapoo bands. His tribal community's religious outlook embodied a type of Christian evangelism in some respects, and a group of Potawatomi converts joined his following over time. He died on the reservation in Kansas in 1852. Reverend William H. Honnell, who visited a few years after Kanakuk's death, reported that Kanakuk went back and forth between Christian teachings and heathenism. Sounds racist. Some Kickapoo descendants still follow the tenets of his preaching. Interesting. So I wonder if the camp is named after him because of those reasons or what, but very interesting person. First of all, Missouri is named after the indigenous Missouria, a Siouan language tribe.
And I know I am absolutely butchering the language here, but I'm trying my best. I at least want to try and pronounce everything.
French colonists adapted a form of the Illinois language named for the people, Wimi Sorita, and the name means one who has dug out canoes. We learned in school that it means the people with the big canoes. The group that would have been in the area that is now Kanakuk would be the Osage Nation peoples.
A spiritual people, the Osage refer to themselves as Niukanska, or people of the Middle Waters. In Osage oral traditions, the people of the sky met with the people of the earth to form one tribe, the children of the Middle Waters. They originally lived in villages primarily along the Osage River. The Osage roamed the land between three great rivers, the Missouri to the north, the Mississippi to the east, and the Arkansas to the south. Their western boundary boundary stretched into windswept plains where they hunted buffalo. The site of Fort Scott is located on traditional Osage homeland. The ancestral homelands of the Osage were part of the immense Louisiana Purchase that the United States acquired in 1803. Missouri achieved statehood in 1821, and soon after, over 5,000 Osage were removed west to the Indian Territory. Other Native American tribes from the eastern U.S. were also relocated west of the Missouri and Arkansas boundary. Federal troops were stationed in this, quote, permanent Indian Territory to keep the peace. After Kansas opened for settlement in 1854, many Native American tribes were again relocated. By 1872, American settlers forced the Osage to relinquish most of their remaining ancestral homelands and were relocated to Pawhuska, Oklahoma. The Osage Nation today continues to be a strong nation and maintains many of their traditional lifeways. Dozens of Osage Nation people were murdered, potentially hundreds slaughtered in the 1920s because they were wealthy from their land having oil reserves underneath it. And so, of course, the white people couldn't handle that and murdered them. And there is a book about this called Killers of the Flower Moon, and there's also a movie based on the book.
Very racist, the camp, because not only is the name vaguely native sounding, the theming of the camp and the headdress that Joe White wears, along with the loincloths that the teenage to young adult camp counselors wear. There's the tribal ceremonies.
E-I-C-T-O-R-Y, that's our Cherokee battle cry. Will we win? You doggone right. Cherokees, Cherokees, fight, fight, fight.
While there are people of color that attend these camps, this is some white bullshit, and this is very racist. And I'm about to show you a video of Joe White just doing his thing. Yeah, they also sort the campers. They separate them by gender. But then they give the different genders their different tribes they belong to. I also found a bunch of like pro Kanakuk blogs, and that's where I found a lot of this information, because I forgot to tell you guys, there's no Wikipedia page for this place. Largest Christian sports camp in the world. Served over 500 campers. 500,000. Major pedophile problem. No Wikipedia page. This is a insidekanakuk.blogspot. This is from 2008. The four tribes would be the girls' tribes, Kiowa and Kickapoo. And the boys' tribes would be Cherokee and Choctaw. Once again, white people. Choctaws and Kickapoos are brother and sister tribes, and then the Kiowas and Cherokee are brother and sister tribes, so I guess they'll be working together. And yes, they do have fake powwows, they do face paint, they do the whole get-up, and they have tribal wars. So let me explain it for all you non-Kanakukers out there. Every kid that comes to K-West is assigned to a tribe. Kanakuk means the loved one in Indian. I don't think that's true. And the land we're located on used to be Indian territory. First of all, how dare you make me say that? My apologies to the indigenous community. But I like that they're like, oh, it used to be their land. How did we get from their land to Christian sports camp? A great deal of our traditions are based on Native American heritage. Yeah, like making up a word. What does that mean? I think I did more research 10 minutes ago than this person has ever done in their entire life. The girls either become a Kiowa or a Kickapoo, and the boys are Cherokee or Choctaw. Each tribe has a princess or a chief leading them that is a fellow camper. Throughout the term, there is a competition among the tribes. At closing ceremonies, either the Kickapoo or Kiowa tribe is raised along with either the Cherokee or Choctaw because they were victorious. I don't want to be here anymore. I mean, that's not all of it. You can also buy a tribal bandana. Oh, man. Is this real life? Am I actually experiencing this right now? I found another blog, love blogs, called It's Not Sissy to be a Christian, playing Indian sports evangelicalism at Kanakuk Camps. One of the largest Christian residential summer camps in the United States is Kanakuk Camps. Located in the Ozark Mountains outside of Branson, Missouri, the camp has never missed a summer since its founding in 1926. Which is true. They also didn't close during COVID. In fact, they got special clearance from Mike Parson to continue having camp. in the summer of 2020, and a lot of people got sick. The day a first-time camper arrived, they are placed in one of two tribes, Cherokees or Choctaws. According to the camp brochure, the hatchet is dug up the first week of camp, and a battle royale is between the two tribes. Over the course of the summer, the two tribes competed in football, baseball, basketball, swimming, marksmanship, and archery to earn points for their tribe. At the end of the term, a winner is decided, and the hatchet is buried with the ceremony until the following summer. Literally burying hatchets. I'm gonna fucking scream. Reflecting on their time at camp, former campers repeatedly recalled their fond memories of tribal competition and offered their well wishes to fellow tribesmen. The potency of imitating Native Americans appeased a desire for an authentic experience in nature and left an indelible mark on the campers for the rest of their lives. Aside from the ceremonies and competitions, Kanakuk offered children the opportunity to learn from Native Americans that previously occupied the land.
Why do I get the feeling that it's not an actual Native American person coming to give a talk about the history of their people to these kids? Why do I have the feeling that it's just going to be Joe White again wearing culturally inappropriate regalia and completely mocking an entire people group? Why do I think it's going to be like that? Each day, campers took a course in Indian studies. Here they learned that the camp is situated in old Indian country, and many relics of the early Indian life are found, arrowheads, spearheads, and pieces of pottery being among those collected. Each class had an instructor allegedly knowledgeable of Native American customs and traditions. Learning about that culture afforded campers instruction on properly playing Native American. These types of lessons inspired one father to declare if he had to have his children miss summer camp or a year in school, he would prefer that they miss the year's schoolwork. What the fuck? Honestly. Each summer at Kanakuk, campers, including Johnny Football, heard a sermon delivered by the camp director entitled The Christian Athlete. This must have inspired Joe White. The sermon linked athletic performance with evangelical Christianity. It began with a story about a football coach who decides to put in a young backup defensive player for one play. The boy goes in and makes a great tackle, so the coach decides to leave him in the game. When the final seconds tick off the clock, the team carries the young man off the field in victory. After the game, the coach asks the boy where he found his ability. The boy reminds the coach that his blind father passed away a week prior, and the boy said, "Well, coach, this is the first game my father has ever seen me play." In explicating the story, the preacher illustrated the reciprocal relationship between the boy's Christian faith and athletic performance. By the end of the sermon, little doubt remains that Jesus loves football and helps his followers on the playing field of life. The sermon concludes with a call to the young campers. It's not sissy to be a Christian, nor is it any easier for an athlete to be a Christian. But it is tremendously important for athletes to be Christians because the athlete has the added blessing of physical prowess and endowment to use as his pulpit. I'm truly speechless. The foundation of Kanakuk's theology and mission was the I'm Third motto. In a sermon about the I'm Third life, campers learned about putting God first, others second, and themselves third. To make the point relevant, the sermon blended the vigor from playing sports and Christianity. The more we find out about the Jesus story, we find how tough and rugged he really was, capable of getting mad when it is necessary, capable of being physically strong and tough, living outdoors all the time. The Jesus depicted here is not the light-skinned, passive, well-groomed man with the halo shining around his head. Rather, the I'm Third Jesus is a gruff, muscular outdoorsman. After highlighting Jesus' physique, the sermon continued. Jesus Christ kept things so simple. He put everything on the bottom shelf, as we say. He kept it right down where we could get to it. The key to discovering Christ's simple message was the Bible. If I had one little book to give a man in business to help him make more money than anybody in the world, would he read it? The preacher mused. Of course he'd read it. He'd memorize it. This book, called the Bible, is one of the keys to perpetual life and an ever-present help to living this life. From raccoons to Jesus' golden rule, Gene Stallings' pregame football speech to Bible reading, the evils of smoking to serving your neighbor, the preacher wove together lessons about nature, physique, athletics, and putting God first, others second, and yourself third. I swear to God, was Mac from Always Sunny the fucking guy giving this speech here? What are you talking about? Sexy tone Jesus? Jesus loves football? The Bible tells you how to get rich? Are you hearing yourselves? Yeah, Jesus loved rich people. Are you fucking shitting me? Like, how fucked up is this idea of a Native American camp where you just make up shit and just completely make a mockery of actual real people, and like there's no acknowledgement of the real horrors that colonizers did to
Native Americans. Like, it's all just a fun, silly thing here. There is a petition going around. There's like a bunch of different petitions for a bunch of different things involving Kanakuk. There's specifically a change.org petition. Confront Camp Kanakuk about their cultural appropriation of indigenous traditions. Every year they choose a princess and wear native regalia in all of their activities. This petition is to confront Camp Kanakuk, try to educate them and change their tradition. All right, now let's talk about Kids Across America, which is one of Kanakuk's largest side camps. And I truly mean it is a side camp. It is an hour away from the main camp, and it is specifically, its purpose is to provide camp for quote-unquote urban youth. Unfortunately, the nice camp, not what the Kids Across America kids get. Allegedly have the shittier camp, with things being run down. Very segregated, and it's for poor kids. Every kid that goes to Kids Across America is there on some sort of scholarship because I guess it takes a lot of money to run camp. I'm not really sure why it was ever that expensive in the first place, but this creates, whether accidental or on purpose, it creates segregation. Because not only is Kids Across America about 50 minutes away from the regular Kanakuk K1 camp, but they're not at all mentioned on the Kanakuk website. And even though Joe White created Kids Across America, he's not anywhere on their website either. Now, maybe they didn't want him there because of the negative attention he brings, but you can't just keep ignoring the fact that Joe White was complicit in hiding abuse, promoting a predator through the ranks of Kanakuk, harboring them at camp, like literally letting them live at the facilities, and is now trying to silence victims through fraudulent NDAs. You can't just pretend that that didn't happen. And so maybe that's why Joe White's not on the materials, but Kids Across America recruits campers and Kalios, that's the name of the counselors, from a variety of after-school programs and sports ministries. One particularly close affiliation is with the Memphis Athletic Ministries, MAM, which has multiple allegations of child sexual abuse and failures in mandatory reporting. Also alleged that these cases of child sexual abuse at MAM have been reported to KAA leaders without consequence. MAM youth and coaches have attended KAA annually since at least 2013. MAM fundraises to cover the KAA's registration fees for campers and Kalios, with MAM coaches attending KAA as Kalios. In 2016, MAM had a fundraising goal of $20,000 to send 70 kids to KAA, $285 a kid. KAA's registration fees for campers and Kalios in 2017 was $165. MAM and KAA commonly recruit staff members from one another. Randy Odom, the president and CEO of KAA since 2021, began his career with KAA as a counselor in 1993, after which he has served as a senior leader from 1997 to 2005. He then worked at MAM from 2005 to 2015, ending his tenure as MAM's president and CEO prior to returning to KAA in 2015 to serve as the director of KAA's leadership camp before being promoted in 2021. MAM also hires Kanakuk people and vice versa. Like Kanakuk, Kids Across America is heavily Christian in nature. They have daily Bible lessons, they pray, and while kids do have lots of fun and make friends, the main goal is that they become Christian or become stronger in their faith. Where Kids Across America differs from Kanakuk in their main programming is Kids Across America heavily relies on this concept of crunk. In fact, the tagline is "Crunk is spelled KAA." They have this thing called the Crunk Castle, which I'm still not sure what that is. God, and you can tell that it was an old white man who came up with this because nobody is even saying crunk or talking about crunk anymore. There's a lot of hip-hop theming, and while there's nothing wrong with any of these things on its surface, it just gives me the ick. And so here's a promotional video from Kids Across America. I did have to blur about 99% of it because I'm not sure how many of these kids are minors, and either way, they don't deserve to be made fun of in my video. I'm not mad at the campers or even the counselors. I'm mad at Joe White for making this program the way that it is.
I look out the bus and I know it looks so fun.
Oh my God, I was like, I ain't never seen nothing like this.
Everybody jumping around, listening to very loud music.
It's just non-stop fun.
I'm like, yeah, this finna be fun.
Very, 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 very hype.
Favorite part about camp, probably when we be at lunch and we be dancing.
I really didn't know that they had parties like every every day.
There's a lot of hypeness going on. There's a lot of screaming and dancing, and it's all fun.
Very energetic.
There's a different type of love here and a different type of atmosphere.
You can get along with everybody here.
You'll make new friends, and you'll see that camp is the best thing ever.
My cabin leaders have been my biggest inspiration.
They all lift you up.
Like, it's not just about sports and stuff, it's about learning about God too.
Before I came here, I knew God was real, but I wasn't exactly sure of it. I wasn't positive of it.
You may know of him, but it will really help you know him.
Jesus died on the cross for our sins.
It changed me in ways I couldn't even imagine doing by myself. You know, you always need help.
He is on our side all the time, even if we do bad things.
It has really opened my eyes up to God. It is helping me know that I can believe and trust in him and call on him whenever I need to. How someone can go from being very sinful and thinking that they are nothing but that to learning that they are a child of God.
Kids Across America all came about because in 1978, Joe White, although it doesn't say that on the website, started Kids Across America by giving the last week of camp in the summer to serve the camping needs of urban youth. Oh wow, he had to let poor people have fun at his camp for a whole week. I'm sure that was really hard for him. The I'm Third Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, was birthed out of this need, and eventually the demand for a camp dedicated to serving urban youth and adult leaders became so great that the first Kids Across America camp was built. I still don't understand why they can't just use facilities of any of the other 6 camps that Kanakuk has over 2 other locations. It was completed and opened in 1991, and in 1995, KAA-2 was opened adjacent to KAA-1. The number of young people and urban leaders served has grown each year. Please, I beg you, use a different word. This demand led to the opening of a leadership training camp called Higher Ground in 1998, and a 4th camp, KAA-3, in the summer of 2003. September of 2000, the I'm Third Foundation was renamed Kids Across America. Each summer, 20 campers receive a special I'm Third award. As the number of young people and leaders served through the camps has grown, KAA has also grown in the scope and support services provided through the year. That's right. They have multiple camps, as well as Kids Across America partners with Angel Tree Camping through Prison Fellowship. Angel Tree Camping is a chance for children of incarcerated parents to get away from their daily challenges and have fun in the great outdoors, making new friends and meeting caring adult counselors. That's only $25. Well, that's nice, I guess. And it looks like this Higher Ground thing is for high school aged kids. A 3-year Christian leadership camp with a primary focus on biblical disciple making and servant leadership developments. Enough with the discipleship. I want off this discipleship.
My name is Jensen Newton, but they call me Mr. Fig, and I am the director of HG. HG is a 3-year program dedicated to training and equipping high school students between the ages of 14 and 19 years old in servant leadership and ministry development. Higher Ground goes on local, regional, and even distant mission trips, helping to train students in the mission field.
In 1978, Joe White established Kids Across America. In 1985, the I'm Third Foundation was created as a separate 501c3 nonprofit organization to oversee and fund the week offered to the inner city youth at Kanakuk camps. So that special week at the end of summer where the kids were allowed to camp at regular Kanakuk. This was in 1985. He created the I'm Third Foundation to oversee this special week. In 1991, a separate campground was built just for Kids Across America. From 1995 to 2001, more campgrounds were built. In 2000, the I'm Third Foundation was renamed to the Kids Across America Foundation. And in 2018, the Kids Across America Foundation Board approved the creation of a new Missouri nonprofit called Kids Across America. As of December 31st, 2019, the Kids Across America Foundation transferred all assets to the organization, transacted as an acquisition. They maintained the same board and leadership. And in 2019, Kids Across America, the new 501c3 organization, was granted tax-exempt status by the IRS. Tuition-paying, mostly white, Kanakuk families are encouraged to donate to KAA at the end of the summer camp term by signing a baseball that can sponsor a nearby cabin of less fortunate children the following summer, a fundraising practice that powered KAA for decades. Rather than integrating socioeconomic groups through scholarships for lower-income children to attend the regular Kanakuk camps, Joe White founded a subsidized, segregated set of camps for inner-city children in 1991 called Kids Across America. KAA also has allegations of abuse. One former counselor claims to have been physically abused multiple times in a crucifixion reenactment known as crosstalk. I have a very disturbing video to show you in relation to this in just a second. KAA programming is augmented from the typical Kanakuk camp's curricula to include the Crunk Castle and the Friendship Solution, targeted at rebuilding trust between urban kids and law enforcement officers. Skit characters such as Crunkisha and the slogan Crunk is spelled KAA. Police officers are sometimes sent as escorts with KAA campers for their terms due to the dangerous nature of the demographic in attendance. While scholarships to Kanakuk camps are available, they are not advertised to KAA eligible families. Joe White does offer such scholarships to military children and to families who are known to have endured Kanakuk sexual abuse. I didn't know about the police thing. So they have resource officers for the urban camp and not the other ones. Even then, I wouldn't want a fucking armed police officer anywhere near a bunch of kids at a summer camp. Are you kidding me? You need lifeguards and paramedics and counselors and mandated reporters. You don't need a fucking cop at a summer camp. Allegedly, KAA executive leadership refused to allow one of their young female staff members to leave the camp early in order to be with her family after her father passed away. They also regularly berated their staff members until they cried in front of the entire team. During a car trip, KAA executive leadership stopped their car and forced a young KAA female staff member to exit their vehicle mid-journey due to their crying. They also allege that KAA executive leadership regularly made statements about female staff bodies, including to stop looking at me with those eyes. KAA executive leadership regularly called some of their black female staff members Camp Gangsta. So I have checked out all these stories. I clicked the links and they were on a Facebook group that shows people's real names. So I will not be showing that, but I trust the people who run Facts About Kanakuk. So I believe these people, although all of these accusations are alleged. And you know what? I found a clip of that. I don't know if it was this guy in particular, but I found a clip from Kids Across America and they show this scenario. Major content warning for what I'm about to show you, but it is very important to get this out. It's a video of a passion play or a simulation of the crucifixion, and this time Jesus is played by a black person. The violence is simulated, but unlike in a situation like pro wrestling, the things that are being portrayed are not for entertainment. They are meant to shock and traumatize the audience. They want these kids to be so compelled and so affected by what they're seeing that they realize how sinful they are and come to Christ. The shock value is a part of it. I also saw a report from a counselor who participated in one of these things, and they were also traumatized by it. Just because the violence is simulated does not mean that a person's response to it is not going to be real. Like, if you've witnessed something like this in your life, whether it be domestic violence or police violence, it's going to be really disturbing, and it's just extremely unnecessary that this even happens in the first place. Which, by the way, that doesn't happen in Joe's version of the crosstalk. He doesn't get whipped. And now that we have heard about Joe White and his associations and his little side ministries, I want to dedicate a full section to James because he is going to talk about Link Year, Link Academy, and Link Hoops, which is very sports centered, but it's actually insane once you get into it because it involves NBA players and vulnerable high school students and hazing scandals. This is such a huge organization, and I can't believe all this shit is affiliated with it. So here you go. Here's James. And once he's done, then we're going to come back to me, and I'm going to tell you all about the sexual abuse and the lawsuits and all the stuff that came from that. So see you in a little bit.
Hey everybody, King James here with a special, I guess, sub-report inside of the larger Kanakuk report we're doing right now. I acknowledge also that I'm sneaking up on you with a new goatee looking like a roadie for the Steve Miller Band, and I mean not like the cool 80s Steve Miller Band, like the now State Fair Steve Miller Band type thing. But inside of this larger Kanakuk story that Jen has been working on and trying to tell, and thanks to the folks at factsaboutkanakuk.com, I was able to discover a story inside of the whole thing that particularly appeals to me as a fan of both professional and college level athletics. I love watching college sports and pro sports, and it turns out inside of the Kanakuk story is a really weird story that relates to, well, both of those things. And it all starts with 3 programs, namely Link Year, Link Prep, and Link Academy. And I know all 3 of those probably sound like exactly the same thing right now, but they're very different, and we will go over those differences shortly. But in order to start out, I think it's important to lead off with explaining what is the Link Year program. Well, founded back in 2011 by close friend of Joe White and Christian educator Adam Donye, Link Year is a Branson, Missouri housed Kanakuk affiliated gap year program, as it likes to describe itself. Adam, particularly when he's describing this concept on podcasts and in interviews and things like that, will highlight that the gap year concept is much more popular in other countries than it is in the United States, and he's kind of trying to bring it over here. But let's take a look at this clip from the Prep Athletics podcast to hear Adam talk a little bit more about this gap year and how it relates to his program.
A lot of people don't know this, but the term is gap year, right? So gap years have been huge in Europe and Australia. It's just almost everybody does a gap year. In the Mormon religion, it's a 2-year missionary trip. And so, but this idea of after high school, you take time to grow and mature. And our students were traveling abroad, so they were getting international experiences. They were getting jobs, and then they were in class and being educated. We're a faith-based post-grad program, so they were growing more in their faith and their biblical understanding and wisdom. And so the idea of a gap year is to mature. So it's not just this year where you sit and do nothing and play video games all day, but we're actually preparing you.
Now, as we kind of hear there, Link Year sort of reportedly says that it will help prepare your kids for life, although it's kind of vague exactly about what that means.
And we call it Link Year because it links high school into their next experience. Usually it's college, but it's not always college. I don't think every student should go to college, and I think they have different gifts and settings. And nevertheless, so Link Year is a 1-year post-grad experience to help kids understand better who they are and whose they are, managing their finances, managing their time, learning how to do laundry, learning how to change oil in their car, just things that I think you and I grew up doing in home ec and different things that they don't see as much.
Now, I want to highlight that for everything Adam described there, he is asking parents to pay $15,000 out of pocket.
And I mean that. This whole thing is unaccredited, so there is precisely 0 financial aid available for Link Year students beyond the program's own scholarships, which we'll talk about later. But hey, they do take credit cards, so that's something.
So one would really hope that it would actually do something in a young person's life. They talk about college credit, but it can only be transferred to one of the 3 scammy Christian colleges that Link Year has specifically partnered with. Oh, and also the curriculum is the biggest fucking joke I've ever seen. Here, let's take a look at it together, shall we? Okay, first, set of courses here. Introduction to Frontline Bible Resources, Introduction to the 7 Pillars of Link Year. Yeah, because I love how one of the courses you can do for credit is a class about the program itself.
Our 7 pillars was taken from Proverbs 9:1. Wisdom has built her house. She has raised her 7 pillars. And so at Link Year, our 7 pillars are authentic accountability, a biblical worldview, growing in gratefulness, heart transformation, maximizing moments, privilege, responsibility, and being students of Scripture. And from there, everything else flows.
I've got a degree in...
Our 7 pillars.
You've got a degree in baloney.
Introduction to Worldviews, Introduction to Introductive Bible Study, Study Abroad. We'll get to that in a second. And while the second half here looks a little more reasonable with things like personal finance and introduction to theology, it also has a plenty good mixture of the wackadoo stuff, including life management, whatever the world that means, and introduction to wisdom. $15,000. Now, notably, since its inception back in 2011, Link Year has and continues to use large portions of the pre-existing Branson, Missouri Kanakuk campus to run its day-to-day operation. Adam Donye even highlights that this was one of his pitches to Joe White, that he would utilize the camp's resources at times where it was otherwise not being utilized in a Kanakuk or other summer camp capacity.
But tell us about you. Where did you come from? How did you end up there at Link Year Prep in Branson?
So I played basketball at Boise State University from 1998 to 2003. And after Boise State, I came out here. I got recruited by the owner of Kanakuk Kamps, Joe White, and he recruited me to come work at sports camps, fell in love with it, came out here and worked in the summers, and then I started being a basketball coach at Hollister High School down here in Taney County. I did that for 3 years, and then I moved up to Kansas City, where I was the head varsity coach at Kansas City Christian Academy for 4 years, and it was there that I had this idea and passion to start a prep school. So I approached Joe White, who is the owner of Kanakuk Kamps, and I said, hey, you use the facilities 9 months out or 3 months out of the year. I need them 9 months out of the year. What if we built a prep school and kind of put our heads together? He loved the idea, and so we started the program, and it's been a perfect marriage.
Although I'm guessing that Adam's pitch to Joe on taking on this whole Link Year concept was a little more personal because, well, for lack of better phrasing, these guys have kind of an intense relationship. We can actually hear him talk a little bit about it from an episode of Joe's own Kanakuk podcast.
Joe, you know, you've been a big fan of Adam for a long time.
Yeah, Shay, I met Adam in Boise. We were doing a Promise Keeper event, and it had to be the Lord because of all the things that have happened since. But out of 10,000 guys in that arena, Adam came down to my dressing room after I spoke. He and I had connected somehow. As soon as I looked him in the eyes, I just, I knew that I needed to be, in his life. And it turned out that Adam really had never had a father who was active in his life, and he was looking for a father figure in his life. And I was blessed to be able to to invite Adam down to Kanakuk, where we just fell in love, and he allowed me to take that a role in his life. Basically our family adopted Adam, and it's been one of the greatest things that's ever happened to my family.
But see, I have to admit, I feel like every single thing that Link Year claims to teach kids, you could probably find it somewhere else, and certainly not for $15,000. Don't worry though, they throw in a little poverty tourism to make sure that all these good Christian kids know just how blessed they are to be an American.
I believe that beyond our comfort zones is where life truly begins. Since the inception of Link Year, we have taken these month-long international trips to get students outside of their comfort zones. And in doing so, we have seen them grow, experience things they've never had the opportunity to experience, meet new friends from different countries and different cultures, and have a better appreciation for what they have back home.
Oh, and they also have a God's Not Dead simulator, apparently.
I believe learning isn't just being taught at, but for a student also being able to articulate what they are learning. So what we do is APQs, short for apologetical questions. So students at Link Year are given tough questions to research, to understand, and be able to articulate, where I'll play the role as an atheistic or agnostic professor speaking with secular rhetoric, trying to get you to know why you believe what you really believe, and we will debate on stage in front of other students, and it really has equipped students to know what they know.
They even have dormitories you can stay in on site, specifically the pre-existing Kanakuk dormitories. Although they've managed to even make that part of it weird with an out-of-pocket rebranding of the tried-and-true residential advisor all of us former dorm dwellers know and tolerated.
Traditionally, you may have heard the word residential advisor. We don't have RAs at Link Year. We have campus shepherds. A shepherd is intimate, a shepherd is personal, and a shepherd knows their sheep extremely well and loves and cares and nurtures them very, very consistently. And so our campus shepherds are in charge of our flock or our student body and making sure that they are loved and cared for on a daily and weekly basis.
Oh, and speaking of rebranding, Link Year has also tried to throw a fresh coat of bullshit onto the concept of the oral exam, or as we'll hear Adam call it, a process.
One of the ways we help our students absorb all the great knowledge they are attaining is at the end of the semesters, we do what we call processes, where you verbalize. Rather than taking a test or writing a 5-page essay, you process with a staff member. You sit in a one-on-one, safe, non-threatening environment, and you have a conversation about what you are learning, what you are digesting, and how you are able to reconcile everything that you have processed that semester.
Oh, and while we're at it, let's go ahead and give all the unpaid interns the old Subway sandwich artist treatment, and then slap them with a gussied up title to justify all the non-existent wages and such.
You may have heard the term interns or internships. We use the term protege because we believe these are the next pros in their field. They are stepping in and acting more like staff than they are an intern that has to go for this or go for that. We are trusting them just like a staff member. We are treating them just like they're one of us and not belittling them, but leveling the playing field.
And I swear that every single thing they brag about being a unique part of the gap year experience, it's just a price-gouged retread of freshman year at community college.
At Link Year, we understand that not every student that attends is interested or engaged in the same topics or subjects. And so we provide opportunity courses here where students have the opportunity to choose different subjects or different topics that they could grow in.
Hey, Adam, buddy, you're literally describing a course catalog. Do you think other colleges and programs don't have those? Now, Link Year started in 2011, but in 2017, they would add the newly formed Link Prep basketball team. Like the original Link Year program, Link Prep is a postgraduate gap year, and it maintains all of the same classwork and academic standards as the original Link Year program as far as I could tell. Alongside their regular Link Year activities, the young men in this program will compete on either a local regional travel basketball team or a national international travel basketball team. The team will play against a variety of different basketball programs, mostly just postgraduate programs like themselves or community college teams. And generally speaking, these kinds of programs are seen as an effective path to playing college basketball. And I have to admit, by all accounts, the Link Prep basketball program has, up to this point, been a massive success, with a boatload of scholarship players to their name all across the NCAA, including many at the Division I level, the highest level of NCAA basketball. And at this point, at least one legitimate actual NBA player in the form of journeyman shooting guard and current Sacramento King, Mason Jones. And I want to highlight that the Link Prep basketball teams are both still in operation to this day. Now, from what I can tell at least, it seems like sometime around 2020, the Link Hoops brand started to break off and become a little bit more independent from the Kanakuk brand. Because at that point, they were still operating the Link Year associated Link Prep basketball teams, while also for the first time introducing their own fully fledged high school basketball program dubbed the Link Academy. Now, I feel the need to note that high school basketball is, in this country, seen as the predominant and premier way for interested kids to get recruited to play college basketball. However, once you jump into the world of high school athletics, you also have to expect new scrutiny because, well, the academics and the procedures are taken a lot more seriously at that level than they are at any sort of postgraduate level. I say all of that to say that it's really important to understand that Link Academy is a full-fledged high school program, and not just a postgraduate Christian dick-around whatever like Link Year is. The attendees of Link Academy are attending Link Academy in place of any other secondary education they might receive, not in addition to. Their high school is Link Academy. Now, Link Academy as a high school specifically partners with the Trinity Christian Academy of nearby Hollister, Missouri to provide their academics. Also, be careful with that website. You'll notice here it's tcaeagles.net. If you go to tcaeagles.org, it's actually the website for an entirely different Christian school, although it has the exact same name and mascot. And likewise, there's also another Trinity Christian Academy in Missouri, specifically in the city of O'Fallon, which doesn't seem to have any athletic programs at all. Now, anyway, getting back to the Hollister Trinity Christian, as far as I could tell, they seem to operate entirely on something called the Ignitia Virtual Academy curriculum, a private Christian institution that, for lack of better phrasing, seems to be like a kind of Khan Academy for evangelicals. Now, I have to say, the whole thing is accredited, particularly with the NCAA, which is important to these folks. So there is at least a general standard of education being put forth with it. That being said, I can't help but feel like it's still mostly a front just for these kids to take super lenient self-paced online classes, and I expect that they were motivated to partner with Trinity because of how much this format opened them up for 6 hours of reported daily basketball practice.
In this clip, let's listen to Link Academy's first head coach, Rodney Perry, talk a little bit more about the program's schooling, and please tell me whether you think the focus is being put on academics or on basketball.
A regular high school has got, an hour and a half a day of practice? How many hours a day were you practicing?
5 or 6.
And how long did it take you to build a corporate culture where they all bought in?
We've probably done that on the first day.
Coach Perry, now what is the academics look like at Link Academy?
Well, it's a interesting setup that we have because we actually go to school a couple different times throughout the day. So we go through shorter spans so that way the guys can actually get more out of it.
Absolutely.
As well. So our first class period starts at 1 o'clock during the day, and it goes from 1 to 5. And then we always come back in the evening from 8 to 9.
I also want to point out that, at least as far as I could find, there is scant little information about the actual, information and academics contained within the Ignitia curriculum. Although we do know that it is quote-unquote biblically based, so we have reason to suspect that much of the information presented may be a bit dubious. And at least one Reddit thread I found of self-reported former users indicated that the program may have served as an easy way for homeschooled Christian kids to secure a diploma, though I will be the first to admit that this is extreme hearsay. And hey, Trinity did manage to secure themselves the endorsement of 70s easy listening icon and Branson legend Tony Orlando, famous, or sort of famous at least, for Tony Orlando and Dawn.
Hi everybody, this is Tony Orlando. In 2009, my daughter Jenny graduated from this school, Trinity Christian Academy in Hollister, Missouri. If you want your child to get the education my daughter got, where she learned patriotism and built of character and loved the Lord, this is where you want to come. It's affordable and it's a very special school. I know. My daughter was raised here.
Did you guys know that guy performed at Trump's inauguration?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome America's most beloved and enduring entertainer, Tony Orlando.
Hello, everybody. Come on, let's celebrate. Come on, you guys know this song.
Now, I will say that the Trinity Christian Academy itself is accredited. But I have to admit I find it a little odd that I had to look up their accreditation on my own since it's not listed anywhere on their website whatsoever. I kid you not. This puff piece from a local realtor had more information about TCA's accreditation than anything the school itself put out. So while, yes, the academics of Link Academy are up to snuff in a technical sense, I also think there's plenty of reason to be concerned. Now, with the boring academic stuff out of the way, we can move on to the sports. Because here's the thing. Link Academy got really, really good really, really quick. The Academy in particular had a great deal of success in poaching some high-level recruits away from other more established prep basketball programs before they themselves had even stepped on the floor for a single high school game. With all of this incredible firepower to their name, the Link Academy would finish the 2021-2022 basketball season with a stellar 34-2 record, a top 5 national ranking, and a berth in the finals of the 2022 Geico Boys National High School Basketball Championships. Now, sadly for the Link Academy boys, they would end up losing this national title game. That being said, though, losing in the national title game is a pretty awesome thing no matter what, especially given the fact that, as I feel the need to remind us now, this was the program's first year of existence. However, Graduating senior Julian Phillips would parlay his success at Link Academy into a scholarship with Division I powerhouse Tennessee in 2022 and a subsequent second-round selection in the 2023 NBA Draft. First picked by the Boston Celtics before a series of trades landed him on the Chicago Bulls, where he plays to this day. Likewise, Jordan Walsh would take his incredible year at Link Academy and turn it into a scholarship with the University of Arkansas, a second-round NBA draft selection in 2023 by the Boston Celtics, although they actually kept him instead of trading him like Julian, a reported $2 million contract, and I shit you not, now an NBA championship ring after said Celtics won it all back in June of this year. And at 20 years old, Jordan is reported to be one of the youngest people to ever be on an NBA championship squad. So yeah, by 2023, this program already had 2 active NBA players to its name, a second place finish in the National High School Championship, and even an NBA title all to its name. And bear in mind, the team didn't exist in 2020. Now, following the end of this mythical 21-22 season, Rodney Perry would leave the team to be replaced by new head coach Bill Armstrong. But things only stayed on the same upward trajectory even as he took over. Notably, the team would return to those same Geico High School basketball finals in 2023, except this time they'd end up actually winning the whole damn thing and beating the more established Arizona Kamps Prep Academy in the process, adding a high school national championship to their already unnervingly impressive trophy case. And in 2024, Link Academy would go back to the high school national tournament yet again, although this time it's sponsored by Chipotle instead of Geico, which I can only imagine is because of that bitter ongoing contract negotiation they have with the Gecko. Link Academy's legitimacy as a high school prep program has grown right alongside their reputation for success on the basketball court. Notably, in just the past year, Link Academy was accepted into the newly formed EYBL Scholastic High School Basketball Conference, a Nike-operated venture to bring together the nation's top prep basketball programs for consistent ranked competition. And the thing is, I highly doubt that a big company like Nike would ever risk being associated with any high school basketball program that didn't have all of its academic ducks in a row, especially given the recent waves of public backlash against more high-profile high school athletics scams like Bishop Sycamore of BS High fame. Likewise, this EYBL Scholastic Conference also plays host to some of the country's most well-established and respected prep athletic institutions. But perhaps most notable among their new EYBL competition is also actually the most direct and obvious inspiration for the Link Academy, namely the IMG Academy of Bradenton, Florida. IMG was founded in 1978 as a tennis academy before getting bought out by a sports management company and, over the course of 4 decades, turned into an elite athletics-focused high school with world-class facilities and educational opportunities to go alongside a reputation for absolute dominance in basically every sport imaginable. And that includes a smorgasbord of pro athletes across basically every sport one can imagine, a slew of high school level championships, and facilities so nice that even pro teams use them for off-season workouts. So yeah, I get why anyone in Adam's position would want to copy IMG. They're the best at what they do. Adam Donye is very open about his goal to turn Link Academy into the IMG of the Midwest, by which I mean an established high school juggernaut known for being top performers both on the field and off the field.
Yeah, so when you want to be one of the best, you got to see how the best are doing it, Corey. So I went and did some extensive research on my own on how IMG operates, what they're doing, why they're so successful, why they're probably one of the best sports development academies in the country. What did their academics look like? What did their scheduling look like? And all those things. So I took 2 trips down to Bradenton, and I have a friend that works for IMG, and there's just some people that have really helped me that have been through there or former employees of IMG, and just I've done extensive research on how that whole program works.
So yeah, all of this really is, or at least it would be, an incredible journey for Link Year, Link Prep, and Link Academy. Or at least it would be, if not for some very strange organizational behavior on their part. Starting in 2022, Link Academy was really trying to distance itself from its Kanakuk roots. Because see, the thing is, Adam Donye in the beginning was more than happy to bring up his Kanakuk connections as a mean of bolstering his own program's legitimacy, and honestly, that was going on up until relatively recently. I mean, hell, in the beginning, Adam was a full-fledged employee of Kanakuk, with Link Year being presented as a kind of side project to go alongside his primary role as the leader of their K2 teen camp program.
Adam Donye here, K2 Men's Director, Link Year President. Want to talk to you for a minute about social media.
However, after listening to several interviews conducted with Adam over time, I couldn't help but notice a distinct shift in the way he would approach the Kanakuk situation. And again, starting roughly sometime in 2022, which notably 2022 was a particularly bad year for the Kanakuk brand, which likely has influenced this change in strategy and marketing, though I'll let Jen tell you about the specifics of that a little bit later on. But suffice it to say, it's pretty clear that Adam is distancing himself from Kanakuk as a means of protecting his Link Hoop system, and let's be honest, most likely protecting Link Academy after its incredible run of success over the past couple of years. I think we can see this change play out most clearly in two interviews that Adam conducted with Harry Schrader at the Valley Hoops podcast, one from 2020 and one from 2022. In this first clip, you'll notice how Adam is more than happy to talk about how Link Year is completely engaged with and embedded inside the Kanakuk system.
And after Boise State, I came out here. I got recruited by the owner of Kanakuk Kamps, Joe White, and he recruited me to come work at sports camps, fell in love with it, came out here and worked in the summers. And it was there that I had this idea and passion to start a prep school. So I approached Joe White, who is the owner of Kanakuk Kamps. And I said, hey, you use the facilities 9 months out or 3 months out of the year. I need them 9 months out of the year. What if we built a prep school?
Talk about the recruiting process, meaning like how do you guys go about finding the players that are going to be a part of Link Year Prep?
Yeah, so the early years, Harry, I had to turn over every tree and bush trying to find guys because no one had heard of us. And all my guy friends that I played with at Boise State, they started having kids that were coming up. And so I was able to get a couple of college teammates' sons, and a couple other kids that had come through the Kanakuk camp system in the summers running the basketball camps that I do. And so that's how we got the ball rolling.
But moving into 2022, let's see how Adam engages with that same topic on this same podcast.
And you've had guys from all over the country. How do they find you? How do you find them?
Letting people know what we were doing. And then once they come down here as you did and see the resources and see how much access these kids will be in the weight room and the gym and protein and all those things, they realize coming here might really accelerate their growth and their development. And so most of the time when we get a kid to visit here, Harry, it's a done deal. Most of the time, not all the time, but most. And so because of those relationships we had with people that were in the basketball circuit and they were able to come see this place and be blown away, then they were able to help us get players and just say, hey, we've been down there. You need to go check it out. And then they go check it out.
And in this clip from the Prep Athletics podcast, we can legitimately hear Adam describe Kanakuk using every available label except its actual name.
You know, I went to your campus last summer, driving through Branson, and it is a beautiful, unique campus. Tell me about where, Link Year is located and kind of what makes it special.
Yeah, so we're in Branson, Missouri. It's a unique, eclectic place. I jokingly call it Hillbilly Vegas a lot. Our campus sits right on Lake Taneycomo, which is beautiful. Our kids go down there and fish all the time. We're right on a bluff.
And tell me about what your campus is like during the summer and what all the amenities are there.
Yeah, it's one of the largest Christian sports camps in the country, and so they run about 20,000 kids through here in the summer running the sports camps. They've been doing it since 1926.
Now, I do want to be fair. I have not consumed every interview or piece of Adam Danye media out there. And it is certainly possible that I've missed something or that he's been more open about it in one podcast or another or however it may be. Notably, Adam does still appear regularly on the Kanakuk podcast itself, and as recently as an interview he conducted with them in May of 2024, was acknowledging himself as an employee of the greater Kanakuk system. But I do want to highlight that there's a big difference in mentioning something like that on Joe White's own podcast with him in the room there, and mentioning it to a recruiter or a mainline sportscaster. But still, he is at least acknowledging the Kanakuk connection somewhere in 2024. Adam Danye still clearly endorses Joe White on both the personal and professional levels, which in my opinion should just call his judgment into question on its own. Head coach Bill Armstrong, well, he initially seems to have avoided the Kanakuk subject just like Adam Danye before him.
I'm sure it's a ton of different things that play a factor, but what do you think has been so instrumental in just the immediate success of Link overall?
We've been able to get great players, and that's because of the infrastructure here of the school that was already, in place with, it's like a college. We're able to run it like a Division I college with the dorm situation, the dining hall, the classroom. We were able to run class like college where we have a block throughout the day. We have a lot of time that we can get in the gym because the gym's right here on our campus, and we're in there 2-3 times a day, and the guys are putting in the work.
Except not entirely. See, because for whatever reason, Coach Armstrong was actually much more forthcoming than I expected about the Kanakuk partnership in his own 2023 interview on Harry Schrader's Valley Hoops podcast.
His vision has taken off. For us to be able to do what we've done in the last 2 years is a pretty incredible story. But it says a lot about the people of Link, of Kanakuk, of Adam Danye's, just the work they put in and just it's all about people. Well, I was blessed to have this opportunity. I thank Adam and Joe and all the people of Link and Kanakuk that have given me this opportunity every day.
Years ago, it was Mouth of Wilson in Virginia and Hargrave Military.
That's right.
And you mentioned the IMGs. And you guys just showed up and kind of not took over, but you've just jumped right in the middle of that national conversation. It's practically just shocking what Link has been able to do in such a short period of time.
It really is. And that just, again, goes back to Adam's vision and the infrastructure that we have here with the Camp Kanakuk, that we can house these kids and the housing and the food and everything is top of the line. So it allows us to recruit really good players.
And in fact, in my opinion at least, he kind of blows the doors off of this whole thing.
I think you wear many hats here as a head coach, assistant coach, the AD and Adam Danye's, our spiritual coach and Joe White.
So Joe White is your spiritual coach, huh? It's interesting. I wonder why you didn't list him on your coach's website. You'd think he'd be a big name to put on there. But see, that's the whole thing here. In my opinion, it is duplicitous for Link Year, Link Academy, Link Prep, any of them, to sidestep this Kanakuk partnership. Because regardless of how independent Adam Danye wants to claim his program is, it is undeniable that this highly beneficial partnership between him, Joe White, and Kanakuk, well, it has been nothing short of a years-long financial windfall for Adam and his Link Hoops programs. And see, the thing is, as far as I can tell, the funding for the entire Link Hoops basketball system comes out of the tuition fees, with all of the basketball players being put on scholarship while the other students are paying that $15,000 fee.
Because we're one of the few postgrads that offer kids full ride scholarships to come to our program. Like you mentioned, the Kamps helps us be able to do that with how much revenue we bring in through Kanakuk Kamps.
Obviously, it's not free to go there. Are the players that come there, what I mean is it's a private institution. So the players there, do they pay or their scholarships? How does it work?
Our guys are on scholarship.
Link Year would never have gotten off the ground at all if not for the massive infusion of resources granted to it by Joe White and Kanakuk. Hell, to this day, Link Year, Link Prep, and Link Academy are both headquartered at the exact same Kanakuk-based street address on Lakeshore Drive in Branson, Missouri, which I find particularly interesting because this building they're in is actually much closer to the aptly named Kanakuk Drive. All of the Link system's success is built upon the resources and clout bestowed upon them by a massive religious organization that they now seem to refuse to even acknowledge in most mainstream interviews. And while Jen's going to explain to you in a little bit just how awful things truly are with Kanakuk, we do already know that things got pretty rotten with Kanakuk under Joe White's leadership as it is, and I think that's grounds enough for the Link staff to keep him away from their basketball players. And yet, at least according to Coach Armstrong, as late as the middle of 2023, Joe's not only allowed to stay in touch with the team, but is acting as a spiritual coach. And make no mistake about it, when you're a high-level sports recruit in high school and you've spent your entire life being told to listen to coaches no matter what, labeling someone a coach like that, it has implications. That title carries weight and it needs to be respected. And I think that sneaking Joe White in as a spiritual coach is disrespectful to both the players on their team and those players' parents. And all of this doesn't even account for just how many grown men have advanced their own careers off of the labor of these hardworking teenage ball players. Rodney Perry, for example, parlayed his 1 year of successful coaching at Link Academy into a shiny new career assistant coaching for the Division I men's basketball program at my own alma mater, Kansas State University. And likewise, 2022 to 2024 head coach Bill Armstrong, well, he's also moved on to the greener pastures of college assistant coaching, specifically the very green pastures of the Division I Baylor Bears men's basketball program. And all of that doesn't account for just how Link Academy is now breathing new life into the careers of some former college coaches who are, well, concerning at best. This year, Link Academy's boys team will take the court with new head coach Chad Myers at the helm. Now, notably, Coach Myers has already spent some time with the team, having been listed as one of Coach Armstrong's assistants for the past year's season, although they did spell his name wrong and also didn't include a picture. It's almost like they don't want people to be looking into this guy at all. I wonder why that might be. Yeah, actually, I don't even want to be coy about this because it kind of needs a trigger warning, specifically for violent and sexualized hazing. So if you don't want to hear about that, skip to this timestamp in the video.
Deuce's freshman year was a nightmare. Deuce was one of 5 players who came forward and reported they were repeatedly hazed and sexually assaulted. They held this news conference.
Slow down. Come on. Finish it up. Finish it up. Finish it up. I'm good. Finish it up. Being able to go through this pain isn't easy, as you can see. But all you can do is weather the storm.
And so just to be clear, Coach Myers, the new head coach at Link Academy, was an associate head coach on this 2023 New Mexico State men's basketball team, which ended up having its entire season canceled after 3 of its players were brought up on violent felony charges stemming from several hazing incidents. Head coach Greg Heyer was immediately just fired outright, but Coach Myers and the rest of the assistant team spent most of the year on paid administrative leave, awaiting the outcome of an investigation into their own conduct and knowledge of the hazing situation. An investigation the university never actually finished, by the way, instead just letting all of their 1-year contracts expire and calling it a day on the whole thing. And yeah, this was also Coach Myers' one and only year at New Mexico State, and that's what he's got to show for it. Great hire. Real good work on the vetting there, Adam. Actually, though, speaking of Adam Donye, let's close out my little segment here on Link Hoops by checking in with its overlord, so to speak, and seeing where he plans to go with all this.
And you guys have developed now a women's program. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so thanks for asking. We're actually trying to develop more than just a women's program. So we're hoping to expand to a men's golf team, to a lacrosse team, to a women's basketball team, to a volleyball team, to an esports. Harry, I never thought I would say that, but esports is taking place. Everything needs to be redeemed, man.
Adam Donye, at least in my opinion, is kind of the second coming of Joe White. an influential Christian guru poised to build a strange, exploitative children's sports ministry off the back of some unscrupulous labor and shifty dealings. I mean, in my opinion, the fact that he calls himself the mere strength and conditioning coach while still insisting on being listed above all his head coaches, well, that leads me to believe he is at least on the same level of Joe in terms of ego. Likewise, I also don't know much about Adam's own religious or political background, though the little I do know leads me to believe that he's likely cut from the same strange cloth as Joe White.
The day is at hand, so then let us cast off the works of darkness. Stop going to watch these zombie movies. Stop going to watch these movies with freaky clowns. Stop going to watch these things that give you nightmares, and put on the armor of light. So we see here, even good things can become sinful things when they lead us astray from the one true Christ. Right? That could be my family, that could be my kids, that could be my vocation, that could be my hobbies. There's so many things that can lead us astray.
But let's be clear as possible. Adam Donier has big plans to expand the Link Academy. But Adam takes this all one step further than places like his inspiration at IMG in Florida by fully acknowledging the intense religious motivations behind his athletic work.
I said, honestly, I want to raise up more Tim Tebow's. Like, I want Link here to have more Tim Tebow's, these athletes that have these platforms at colleges and universities that I think are greater than any other person has a platform. Like that 4 years, 18 to 22 years old, the way Tim Tebow impacted Gainesville campus is unbelievable.
And honestly, I think Adam Donier has just made it abundantly clear that, well, he's always kind of had a vision to separate the Link programs from Kanakuk at some point, with tentative plans for his own kind of Link compound being provided to his local paper as early as 2021. And while they're still just kind of grifting off Kanakuk's leftovers at this point, their meteoric athletic success and apparently upcoming plans to add several new sports, well, it wouldn't be surprising if this compound ended up becoming a reality sooner rather than later. But see, like Joe White, Adam Donier also appears to be way too friendly in forgiving even the most heinous of behaviors from people he hires to put in child-facing roles. Seriously, how the hell is Chad Myers an appropriate coach for a high school basketball team? But that's something I really want to make clear about this whole thing. Link Hoops is a youth basketball program. While yes, Link Prep accepts graduated seniors and folks over 18, just as many of its players have been active high school seniors, and Link Academy is a straight-up high school program that could take kids as young as the 9th grade. A lot of times, high school boys as big and as strong as the ones they recruit to play at Link Academy, well, they don't get the benefits of youth that their smaller, weaker peers might be getting, even when mentally those two groups of people are at the same level. And that is particularly and critically true for black boys, who've so far made up the bulk of the entire Link Hoop system. Boys in these situations need coaches who not only recognize the youth of their players, but who are also willing to stand up for that youth and to remind their fellow staff of the responsibilities that entails in their jobs. And yet, by all accounts, Adam and his team are most interested in just finding big, strong boys who won't show them any attitude, which I personally think could just as easily be read to mean boys who won't argue with coaches even when they're actively being mistreated, before putting them into a pseudo-collegiate basketball program where they can be used to further his own brand.
And so it's important for me that we just don't recruit anybody because they're good, but we recruit the right kind of guys that have a teachable spirit. And one of the things I ask all the guys when I recruit them is, how are you going to respond when you disagree with me, or I rebuke you or challenge you with something you don't agree with? And that answer to that response usually tells me whether or not we want that kid in our program.
And let's also acknowledge that Adam Donier has been doing this racket for a while, working with different black youth basketball players he's coached over the past 2 decades to create both a book and a documentary, which, by all existing evidence I can find at least, just seems to be The Blind Side starring Adam Donier. Now, for the record, this Dave documentary seems to have disappeared offline, except for this trailer that you're looking at, and I'm not even going to pretend to have read Adam's book. But suffice it to say, the exploitation vibes are just far too strong to ignore here.
For a long time, Hollister was like the redheaded stepchild.
You know, the hillbillies across the track.
There's a lot of broken homes.
Not a lot of diversity.
I had the option of whether to work with Branson or Hollister. I chose Hollister.
Adam, going down the hall, meets this guy named Dave, who's the biggest kid in school, the most overlooked kid in the school, too.
And I had asked Coach Winger, I said, why isn't this kid playing basketball? He said, well, he's your and I said, well, does that mean he can't play?
And yet at this point, I don't see any reason to think that Link Academy's rise is going to stop anytime soon. I really can't stress to you all enough how important I think that EYBL membership is for the team, as I suspect this conference is about to become a premier Division I NCAA basketball recruiting pool. And I mean, legendary Golden State Warrior Andre Iguodala just sent his own son to play for Link Academy this year, meaning that even the absolute undeniable best of the best in American basketball have fully accepted the legitimacy of this program. So yeah, all of this would irritate and concern me all on its own, though in a vacuum, maybe these things wouldn't be what I would consider mortal sins of the Link program brand. Though once again, cannot stress enough that Chad Myers was a terrible choice for a high school basketball coach. And yet, there is a much darker part of the tale that we still need to tell you all about. And it's the reason that I consider Adam's shifting tone regarding his connection to Kanakuk to be deeply concerning instead of just mildly irritating. But that's something I'll let Jen talk to you all about now. Although please bear in mind, upcoming trigger warning for CSA.
So now we're going to talk in more detail about the sexual abuse that went on at the camp and other places, because this was happening on mission trips. This was happening on Kanakuk sanctioned sleepovers. It was happening a lot. And we are going to focus mainly on Pete Newman, who was a counselor from 1995 to 2009. Since so many people have come forward with their testimonies of abuse, we have since found out that this was not just Pete Newman, and this was not just in the 90s. This started in the 80s, actually. It's not just counselors. It's Joe White's pilot. It's people who worked there once and went on to somewhere else to do it. It's just horrible. Children, anybody should be able to go to camp without being abused. Are you kidding me? And one instance is too many. The camp needs to shut down. They have a responsibility to do so. I cannot believe that they still insist that this place is safe. They have this stupid child safety plan that does nothing. The fact that they have NDAs trying to cover up this stuff, that just proves that they're not being honest about it. And how dare you? You have a responsibility to take care of these people's children. The most precious thing on earth, their children. And you're going to let this happen and cover it up? Joe White repeatedly would go to bat for these pedophiles. He would go to court and defend them. Let them stay on campus. Promoting Pete Newman after many people had reported sexual abuse. Joe White did all that. And there were other people who bungled this, but it's Joe White's baby. He needs to take care of it. I'm going to try and tell you the information while not being too graphic, and this whole thing's going to be very triggering for a lot of people, and I understand that, so if you need to dip, that is okay, because this is awful. It's horrific. Over 30 years of abuse, and they're still allowed to operate to this day. They're given church status. It's just unbelievable. I feel like I have the duty to tell people about this. Like, I care about all children and all abuse victims, but this is happening in my own state, and I just feel just so fucking sick that these kids went through this and this camp is still allowed to be around. Are you kidding me? One person gets food poisoning at a restaurant and they shut down. And you're still operating a camp after having more than 5 convicted sex offenders running around? I feel crazy. Like, how is this allowed? There have been more sex offenders than are just reported in this list. The fact that they were able to compile a short little list here of the top 6 shows you how bad things were, including Corby Dale Grimes, a counselor who held a variety of Kanakuk jobs in the 1970s and 80s, was sentenced to life in prison in 2002 for sexually abusing a boy in Texas in 99. A Kanakuk director testified at Grimes' trial where he disclosed that Grimes had been fired from Kanakuk after an incident involving a young male camper. There's also Robert John Morgan, who was Joe White's pilot. He pled guilty in 2004 to sexually abusing a young female relative. Joe White then testified on Morgan's behalf and provided him housing at Kanakuk in the off-season while he awaited trial. William French Anderson, a lauded scientist known as the father of gene therapy, attended Kanakuk as a child and volunteered there for decades teaching self-defense to campers. He was convicted in California in 2006 of sexually abusing a young girl. Paul Kerr, a Kanakuk summer staffer from 1997 to 2005, pled guilty in 2002 to sexually assaulting a 9-year-old girl at a daycare where he worked in Colorado. He confessed to spying on other young girls for sexual gratification. Ed Ringheim, a Kanakuk counselor in the 90s who later volunteered with the Kanakuk-affiliated K-Life program in Florida, was convicted in 2012 of 7 sex-related felonies involving underage boys, including one victim he had chaperoned from Florida to the Branson camp. Lee Bradbury, a Kanakuk counselor, pled guilty in 2013 to 4 sex-related charges involving campers at Kanakuk before he was finally fired in 2011. This is all from Springfield News Leader article. Chuck Price, who was fired in 1990, abused an 8-year-old girl in 1985, and even after the girl's mother reported it and after the girl reported it, literally nothing was done. Pedophilia wasn't on my radar. It should have been, but it wasn't, said the former Kanakuk employee who was interviewed for the story on the condition of not being named. I didn't alert the police, which was a mistake. I didn't know what to do, but even if the organization didn't offer training, it was my responsibility as someone who worked with youth in any capacity to be prepared. He continued to volunteer with the Kanakuk-affiliated K-Life Youth Ministry until at least February 2022, when a reporter called the Urban K-Life chapter in St. Louis. In a picture from 2017 posted on his Facebook page and later made private, Price posted with Kanakuk CEO Joe White while wearing a Kanakuk visitor's pass around his neck. Contacted by a reporter in 2021 and asked if he was fired from Kanakuk for abusing a child, Price did not answer the question. Instead, he responded, "I am busy doing the work of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and that is all I'm focusing on." The girl said that I was in a room with the director and about 3 other people. Nobody really reacted. There was no, "I'm sorry this happened to you. I don't remember any kind of sympathy or real care or God, maybe we should get a therapist in here." It was like nothing happened. Then, a former Kanakuk leadership team member who was involved in the investigation said he witnessed Price admit to touching the girl. "We were shocked because Chuck never had any other incident at all," said the former leadership team member who insisted on anonymity before speaking with a reporter. Then the guy says that Chuck admitted to doing some kind of touching, but not another kind of touching. And I don't understand why this is being justified. The girl's mother said a Kanakuk director assured me that Price had never abused before and would not happen again. It had been handled. Like the first incident, the second allegation was not reported to police. Christine Jones said camp leaders persuaded her that subjecting her daughter to questioning could be traumatic. The former leadership team member recalled that the Jones family asked not to contact authorities, and the camp honored that request. "We figured if at any time thereafter they changed their minds, we could immediately contact the police," he said. "If we got any reference calls about any future employment, any job with kids, we could nip that in the bud and prevent Chuck from ever getting a job with children." That was not the case, as he continued to work with children for decades. If they had called the police regardless and actually had a proper investigation, it could have prevented a lot of problems. The fact that Kanakuk decided to just kind of play it by ear and be like, "Oh, well, in the future, if people called, we could just make sure not to give a good reference." No, that's not enough. And it sounds like Kanakuk was trying to intimidate the family anyway, so even if they wanted to come forward, I don't know if they would have been comfortable. And then there's Pete Newman.
Hello, Newman.
And I truly don't know what it is about this guy that made Joe White go so far out on a limb to protect him, but he did. On the day Newman arrived at camp, according to a personal letter written from Newman to Joe White, White told Newman he would be his, quote, Missouri daddy. Newman quickly became the camp's most popular counselor.
Why did you choose not to fire Pete Newman at that time?
If you can
and I know you're kind of new to Kanakuk, but if you can imagine a person who has been operating to our knowledge in thunderous applause of kids, parents, fellow workers, countless, you're a hero to our child, he had more kids doing year-round Bible studies, which is one of our top measures of success.
So because Pete got a bunch of kids excited about Bible study, Joe thought it was okay for him to do what he was doing. He thought it was okay to ignore the reported behavior, and we have reports from 1999 that he was doing this. Joe says it's okay because he got a lot of kids to do the Bible studies. And you know what? A lot of those Bible studies were conducted naked with children. So I don't think this is very cute, Joe.
He had countless kids in that. And all I heard, and again, I didn't travel with Pete. I didn't manage Pete. But all I heard was, like I said in the quote, over and over again. I mean, just like I had never heard about any director of Kanakuk or any assistant director or any counselor of life-changing person in my child's life. People took him on vacations with their kids.
And that should have never been allowed, but it is a part of Kanakuk culture, apparently. They used to encourage counselors to stay with families as a means to save money.
And then there was in my mind, a 30-minute incident, albeit improper, immature, but in this giant ovation of accolades, appreciation, applause, but people knew him and spent more time with him than I did. It was just like this incident, and I referred a minute ago to a second incident in 2003.
Joe is referring to the fact that in 2003, the second time that we know of, that Newman was caught sexually abusing children and being suggested to be fired by Will Cunningham, his direct supervisor. Joe White promoted him. That's what he's talking about.
It was like a cascade of a waterfall of appreciation, applause, accolades. Way to go. Thank you for changing my kid's life. Thank you for turning around my kid. Thank you for... He comes back home after being with you. He's the boy we never had before. We just heard that over and over and over again. And then there were 2 drops of water that we did not think were poison at that time. We thought they were inappropriate.
Yeah, child sexual abuse, that's really just like a 2 tiny drops of water in a large pond of pedophilia, right? Is that the metaphor that Joe was going for? Because I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. Fill you in on a few things because I'm going to be reading from a lawsuit timeline, and so you might be missing a little bit of context. First of all, Pete Newman was a Kanakuk counselor. He used to run the father-son camp. He, I think, used to work at either K Country or K West, and he was very popular and well-loved, it appeared. But behind the scenes, he was sexually abusing little boys. And we're talking at least 60 have come forward. There's probably a lot more because he stayed at campers' houses and he went on mission trips with them and he was around all the time. He had so much access to children and he was repeatedly caught and his behavior was reported a lot. And nothing was done until 2009 when Kanakuk was afraid that they were going to get in trouble. Somebody else you need to know about would be Will Cunningham. I only have one picture of him. He seems to be hard to find on the internet. I wonder why. He was some sort of supervisor of Pete Newman, but he did not have the ability to fire him. And this comes up later because Joe White was the only one who would have been able to fire him, and he promoted him instead. He suggested that Pete be fired, but nobody listened to him. Could he and should he have called the police? Absolutely. But I'm pretty sure Will Cunningham is the one who made up the really weird and inappropriate disciplinary plan for Pete Newman in the 2000s, which we will get into in just a minute. So I don't know. I don't trust any of these people.
I had confidence in Will Cunningham as a professional Christian counselor, that he knew Pete better than anybody. May I say also that Will's children, and you were a minute ago when you were talking about Will's friendship, Will encouraged his children to spend time with Pete Newman. Will certainly would have not compromised the safety of his children by trumping his responsibility as a dad with his friendship for Pete Newman. I was very comfortable that Will would oversee Pete, would correct Pete, would do whatever it takes to make sure that Pete was above reproach as a professional Christian counselor after that situation. And I also had confidence that Chris Cooper would monitor that well as an executive director.
Oh yeah, he's talking about a different guy who I need to mention, Chris Cooper, who was somebody's supervisor. He gets brought up a lot in many lawsuits because he knew about the reports of nudity with children and sleeping with little boys in their bed naked. And Chris didn't see anything wrong with that. In fact, I have him here in another deposition saying that that's totally fine.
Every person that sleeps with a child is not a pedophile. And in Pete's case, Pete's ministry was tremendous.
In a different situation involving a predator and sleeping with children in bed, Chris Cooper defended Ed Ringheim, who is now a convicted sex offender, saying that it wasn't weird that he got into bed with a child. He said, Ed crawled into bed with the boy because he was homesick and was just attempting to comfort him. The general tone of the meeting was that it was an awful situation for Ed because he was just trying to be loving to the boy. Then this guy got moved into a maintenance position at camp, but continued to abuse.
In your own experience, having a grown man who's sleeping one-on-one with boys with no one else around is a danger sign, isn't it?
That is that's an immature decision for sure.
Well, it's more than an immature decision, isn't it?
Well, again,
isn't it a sign of a potential sexual abuser?
Section 4. No, I don't think that it's. I think there's a wide gap between that and pedophilia.
Okay, we get it, dude. We know who to come to next time we need a pro sleeping with children opinion. Good Lord. This is what you really care about. This is what is important to you, Chris Cooper.
Okay, so you know in 2000 he's four-wheeling naked with a child, and you reprimand him for his judgment in that, correct?
It's immature behavior, yes, ma'am.
And then in 2001 you find out that he's sleeping one-on-one with children. Those two facts combined together certainly raise a red flag, don't they?
Section 4. Not necessarily.
Doug Goodwin, remember him? He's kind of all over the place. He was on the board of directors at Men at the Cross. He's a board member at K-Life. He's an elder at Woodland Hills. He's a director at KKY. He's the president of Kanakuk Ministries. Yeah. He's been around. He also had trouble calling what Pete did inappropriate. I don't know why. Like, the mental gymnastics these people are going through to protect this man.
And what were your thoughts at the time Mr. Cooper talked to you about Pete Newman riding a four-wheeler in the nude with a child?
Thought it was a very dumb thing to do.
Did it strike you as being bizarre and inappropriate behavior?
It struck me as something that I would not do. It did, at this particular time, Pete was not far out of college, so it wasn't within the realm of the impossible to me.
I don't know if I want to say that they're being naive or malicious. Like, how can anybody hear the phrase naked with children and not immediately be freaking out? As for Joe White, it just wasn't on his radar.
We felt like that even though these two acts were irresponsible and immature, that any kind of, like I said before, pedophilia or anything, it wasn't even on the radar screen.
It doesn't surprise me that Kanakuk leadership refuses to acknowledge the inappropriateness of nudity with children, because they're probably trying to protect themselves legally. In court documents, interviews, and other information reviewed by the news leader, the first reference to Kanakuk contacting authorities about potential abuse was in the early 2000s, when the camp reached out to a former Taney County prosecutor to ask whether Newman might have broken the law by being nude with children. Former prosecutor Merrill, who filed charges against Newman after his 2009 confession, confirmed that a predecessor had reviewed the matter and concluded that Newman exercised poor judgment but had not violated the law. So they're just going off what had happened in the 2000s. Somebody told them that it was legal, and so they didn't feel the need to get the authorities involved because they want to protect their stupid camp, and also they don't want to go to jail because they knew about child abuse. Kanakuk, Pete Newman, Joe White, Chris Cooper, and several others have been named in numerous lawsuits over the years due to the rampant sexual abuse going on at the camps and the cover-ups of that abuse. Many of these suits are still ongoing, and a few of the survivors have signed NDAs as a part of their settlements and were not allowed to speak out for years. And when the reports started surfacing about just how bad the abuse was and how leadership covered it up, some of these same survivors realized that they had been defrauded, because they never would have settled and signed NDAs if they had known this information. So now many of them are speaking up and using their real names and being very brave to tell their story, because this really matters. And so the timeline that I am reading from is a timeline from these lawsuits. In 1995, Pete Newman was hired as a camp counselor despite having an incomplete application and no background check. In 1999, Newman was caught nude with children, and it was reported that Newman had led nude activities with children on campgrounds owned by Joe White, including naked four-wheeling. Despite this report, Newman is promoted to full-time staff at Kanakuk and begins serving as the director of the father-son ministry. He maintained this role and other leadership titles until 2009. Around this time, parents report suspected sexual behavior with their son. A concerned parent reported to Joe White and Kanakuk entities that her suspicion of Newman exhibiting unusual sexual behavior toward her son at a father-son retreat after witnessing her son throw away his jeans and proclaiming, "I never want to see Pete again." In 2000, Newman is promoted to summer staff leadership and men's director for K Country. In 2001, Newman is warned by a supervisor. Newman's direct supervisor, Will Cunningham, the director of K Country, sent Newman a formal letter warning him to avoid sleeping one-on-one with children and other corrective guidelines and recommendations. And I have a copy of this disciplinary plan. It's available on Facts About Kanakuk. And it's 4 pages, and it's crazy shit like, list 3 things former President Clinton did wrong regarding his encounter with Monica Lewinsky. Number 1, cheated on his wife. Number 2, lied about it. Number 3, failed to set the example of what a leader should be like. Finish this sentence with 3 true statements. The Catholic Church's priest sexual abuse scandal is tragic, detrimental to the church/Christian faith. Reason for parents question ministers involved with their kids. List 3 reasons why camp counselors sometimes get accused of inappropriate conduct. Number 1, their conduct is inappropriate. Number 2, the child has past abuse experiences that stimulate fear. Number 3, they are careless in ministry strategy/uneducated. 3 rules for counselors' personal interaction with campers that begin with the word always are: always think like a parent, always do ministry the way Jesus did, always set the bar high in integrity/teaching and encouragement. 3 rules for counselors: never be naked with a child. Yeah, I'd say that is a good rule. Never put self in questionable situations, i.e. giving girls rides home. Never touch a child in an aggressive or sexual way. List 3 reasons why a counselor must avoid the appearance of improper behavior. Satan is crafty. Parents are not always saved and don't understand. Guilty until proven innocent. Oh my God. What should a counselor do who is unsure whether the behavior he or she is engaging in with a camper is inappropriate? Number 1, should be no question. If he has to ask, he has gone too far. Number 2, ask director's advice. Number 3, stop. Yeah. List 6 things that might happen in the life of a camper who has that inappropriate interaction. Humiliation, gospel becomes foggy, lack of trust, turn back of faith, guilt, depending on a minister's outcome. Oh my God. This Post-it note says it all. No mention of PTSD. Write out boundaries for yourself. Need an accountability partner. Greater understanding of legal side. Prosecuting attorney out to increase their career. No mercy in jail. Oh my God. And then they printed this out. This is a whole paper trail. The objective, to help Pete understand what healthy ministry is and to make sure Pete never places himself in a compromising position. We want to ensure that Pete be involved in a lifetime of ministry. Overall boundaries. This is like, never encourage students to disregard other responsibilities to be with you. Failure in these areas will disqualify you from ministry privilege. Interesting that you say that because it didn't. All contact with kids should be in public. Never spend the night alone with a child, even though that was one of their policies, the winter trail policy. Never be involved in sexual humor. Never suggest to be involved in sexual or nude behavior. Always put a stop to inappropriate behavior. Yeah. Oh yeah, he's supposed to make sure that he regulates the time he spends with campers versus time with his family. And it says, this is in effect until you are married. After you are married, we will sit down and reevaluate. And then he's supposed to have regular accountability sessions with Will Cunningham. I have an interesting video of Joe White talking about how he expected Will Cunningham and Pete Newman's wife to be the layer of accountability to keep him from being a predator.
Pete Newman, over the years that he worked with us, had his initial layer of accountability was his wife, who I am convinced, completely honest, completely forthright, astute, had no idea about Pete's actions. He was a married man. The second ring around Pete was his own family. As Chris explained to you yesterday, his father was a pastor, Green Bay Packer chaplain for 22 years. 3 brothers in the ministry, finest family, Mrs. Turley, you've ever met in your life. We thought they knew Pete inside and out very well.
Around this time, Newman is promoted to assistant camp director for K Country. In 2003, Newman is caught nude again with children. Joe White and his crew received new reports of Newman sexually abusing children, including more nude activities. This is when Newman receives disciplinary action. Cunningham reprimanded Newman and dismissed him from participating in the 2003 Summer Leadership Weekend. Cunningham did not have authority to terminate director-level employees, so this was the most severe disciplinary action he could execute as Newman's supervisor at the time. Only Kanakuk CEO Joe White could terminate director-level employees. And he should have did that like 5 years before this. Newman maintains leadership role. Rather than terminating Newman as requested by his direct supervisor, Will Cunningham, defendants maintained Newman's assistant director role and continued aggressively promoting him as the face of Kanakuk in marketing materials and fundraising nationally. In 2005, Newman is promoted to camp director of K Country after Will Cunningham leaves his role. I wonder if he left because of this. Newman fully assumed his role as K Country director in the summer of 2008. In 2006, defendants dismissed another concerned parent's report. A female camper reported to her mother that she witnessed Newman's inappropriate behavior with a boy camper during her K Country term. This is also corroborated in several articles. The mother reported this to defendants, who said they reported this to Kanakuk, who said they would investigate the matter. Defendants later responded to her that they had looked into the incident and that the female camper who reported the incident to her mother was neither athletic nor godly enough to be a fit for Kanakuk, so she should not return. That is diabolical. Also in 2006, Kanakuk learns that Newman is having hot tub Bible studies with underage boys. I'm not going to get into it, but if you read the articles, please be aware that they discuss in detail what exactly happens at the hot tub Bible studies, and it's shocking. Joe White felt that this was enough of a problem to issue a corrective action himself. The correction, however, was not to prohibit the regular hot tub encounters, but merely an encouragement to Newman to reassess the amount of time he was spending with his family. In 2009, the jig was up because enough parents were confronting Kanakuk with these reports of sexual abuse that Pete had to confess what he had done. In 2009, defendants confront Newman after receiving legal accusations from parents. 10 years after, defendants first knew of Newman's abusive nudity with children. He then confesses to defendants of at least 5 counts of sexually abusing children over 10 years. Like, he made a whole list of the people, and since then we have found out it's been dozens and dozens more than he reported originally. Kanakuk dismisses Newman from his employment, and then he leaves town immediately until his arrest in September of 2010. The camp tells families that Newman had a family emergency and to keep him in their prayers. Kanakuk then begins to disclose information regarding Newman's abuse of children to their commercial liability insurance provider, Ace American Insurance Company. They continue to disclose information throughout 2009 and 2010. In 2010, Newman receives 2 life sentences plus 30 years in Missouri State Prison based on multiple counts of statutory sodomy and child enticement involving child abuse on Kanakuk property. At the time of his sentencing, 57 victims were known, although that list has grown over time and as more survivors come forward and file claims. Kanakuk decides to withhold information regarding Newman's history and patterns of abuse to campers and their families, including plaintiff Logan Yandel, the guy who was suing Kanakuk in this instance, after being advised to do so by their insurance policy provider. Kanakuk drafts 2 letters with information regarding Newman's abuse of children that they considered sending to approximately 8,000 campers, including plaintiff Logan Yandel. Kanakuk sends these letters to Ace American Insurance Company for review prior to distribution. Ace American Insurance Company responds with such disclosures threaten to expose Kanakuk to greater liability and may interfere with Ace's contractual right to defend claims to have Kanakuk's cooperation in that defense. We strongly recommend that you do not send out the proposed public disclosures about Mr. Newman's misconduct at camp and Kanakuk response to the conduct. Kanakuk decides not to disclose information regarding Newman's patterns of abuse to campers. In order to induce a swift settlement, defendants tell plaintiff family that they had no prior knowledge of Newman sexually abusing children. With this understanding, the plaintiff and his parents agree to settle their claims against Kanakuk for a confidential amount and enter into an NDA. That NDA is what kept them from speaking out until now. But then, because of articles written about Kanakuk and more people coming forward, they figured out that Kanakuk was lying and that they knew about the incidents back in the 90s. And so then they were like, we were defrauded. We can sue for that.
The Yandel family signed a non-disclosure agreement more than a decade ago after learning their son was abused for 3 years at Kanakuk. They tell me if they knew then what they knew now, they never would have signed it.
Kanakuk has been silencing victims for many, many years now. And you know, enough is enough.
The family reached a settlement agreement with Kanakuk and signed a non-disclosure agreement in 2010. Logan, who'd finally told his story, had to go back into silence. Until now.
NDAs are for trade secrets. NDAs are not to silence children who experienced childhood sexual abuse.
This lawsuit filed by Logan alleges victims signed non-disclosure agreements, quote, without knowing the true facts regarding Kanakuk's active misrepresentations and concealment of Newman's sexual misconduct. The petition claims White and other Kanakuk defendants received several complaints Newman had engaged in naked activities with kids. The first complaint came in 1999. Most of the claims are from this signed affidavit from Newman's supervisor, who says he recommended Newman be fired. Newman remained on staff and was later promoted.
I don't understand how someone that runs a camp where your sole focus is, first and foremost, the protection of children. Because as a parent, you send your kid to a camp with the trust that that camp is going to protect my child.
The number of kids abused from the time of the alleged first complaint in 1999 until Newman's 2009 confession and firing, unknown. The Yandels hope their lawsuit will help reach victims beyond their son.
I want more victims to have an opportunity to walk forward and feel free to speak their truth and to have healing. I want Joe White to step down. I want Joe White to admit that he knew.
I called Kanakuk and asked to speak with Joe White. He's not returned our calls. There is a statement on Kanakuk's website that reads in part, Newman was a master of deception, fooling not only Kanakuk, but also his friends, neighbors, and even his own family. As soon as Kanakuk became aware of abuse, we took action, including immediate termination and reporting him to authorities. Of course, the Yandel family and a former employee say none of that's true.
And so Kanakuk is now going after the insurance company and trying to blame them and saying, well, we didn't say anything because you guys told us not to.
News today on the lawsuit against one of America's largest Christian camps, Camp Kanakuk.
The camp is now suing its own insurance company, saying that they are the real ones at fault here. You know, this is a story we've been following for some time here at WSMV4. Former camp director Pete Newman is serving 2 life sentences after pleading guilty to 7 counts of sexually abusing boys at that camp. Now, one of the survivors from Hendersonville sued the camp itself last year, saying they knew about the abuse and helped cover it up.
Yeah, court documents show the camp's new lawsuit admits that leadership was aware of the abuse, but it was the insurance company who lied to families and prevented the camp from telling them about what happened.
This is another very informative PDF from Facts About Kanakuk. Did Kanakuk and Joe White have child sexual abuse victims sign NDAs? Yes, although Kanakuk denied the practice of silencing victims in civil litigation, there is a plethora of evidence to the contrary. Once survivors spoke out to CBS about being silenced with NDAs, Kanakuk changed their position to state that yes, the NDAs exist, but only at the request of plaintiffs. This was also untrue, so survivors continued to speak out about the misuse of NDAs against them as child sexual abuse survivors, which is institutional abuse. Finally, after media attention, Kanakuk acknowledged their use of NDAs against child sexual abuse survivors, yet put the onus on their insurance companies, once again deflecting responsibility. One family even refused to sign the NDA clause in their settlement agreement, so Kanakuk tried to sanction them, costing the victim family an additional $40,000 in legal fees and exhibiting the forceful tactics of Kanakuk and its agents to enforce silence. An unknown number of victims who survived horrific and countless crimes as children remain under Kanakuk NDAs with no relief. Kanakuk put another Newman victim under an NDA as recently as January of 2023, which they claim was a clerical error. Many families feel forced to accept these deals to move on and avoid the emotional toll of a trial. Some articles may lead readers to assume victims are getting a $20 million settlement, but those are default judgments and not payable. A petition for the release of NDAs has garnered more than 26,000 signatures, and a Vice News documentary on the abuse and NDAs won an Emmy in 2022, bringing even more credibility to the voice of survivors. And I am going to put all the petitions and stuff that I find in the info box, so you can also sign that if you want. Is it true that Joe White harassed victims to the point of one family needing to file a federal restraining order against him? Yes, multiple victims and their families have reported receiving lavish gifts from Joe White before and during litigation, including iPads, offers of trips to places like Disney World, fruit baskets, hunting trips, free camp, and even thousands of dollars in cash. Victim families describe these gifts as feeling like bribes or extortion. They also report receiving Kanakuk-related marketing and donation solicitations despite active and past litigation and requesting cease and desist. At one point, Joe White refused to stop contacting a minor victim directly, so one family filed a federal restraining order against him, which a judge granted. Kanakuk has had a piss-poor response to this entire situation. They continue to victim blame, they continue to pressure and shame people, threaten them. It's just crazy. Like, just admit that you have a problem and shut down the camp. But, they make too much money. And there's also, diversified investments on Joe White's part. He's got about 1 million different little side businesses and ministries, and when it's a ministry, it's tax-free, so he makes even more money, and has expanded into multiple states, and he has celebrity endorsements, and he wins awards, and he's given honorary doctorates, and people respect him. And I mean, he's still posting on social media. People love him. This is crazy, but Kanakuk on their website says, in 2009 and 2011, Kanakuk discovered that 2 employees had violated the sacred trust that we and our camp facilities placed in them through abusive actions that stand counter to our missions and values, wrote Goodwin, the Kanakuk Ministry's president, in a May 4th message to incoming campers. While we are not aware of any other reports of abuse at Kanakuk, we will continue to apply and evaluate our safety practices to help keep camps safe and fun for all. And then Kanakuk goes on in this statement, a statement about addressing sexual abuse at their camp, by dissing an advocate group. The letter refers to several authors and a website run by an anonymously owned LLC, as well as a vocal group that includes some victims and former employees who have fallen prey to many of these false narratives and have added their voices in support. We will not be surprised and are fully prepared if future publicity stunts by these groups should include lawsuits, online productions, or other efforts to gain media attention or disrupt our ministry operations. Goodwin wrote, "Pursuing such actions would be unfortunate, but Kanakuk has been transparent and has nothing to hide." And for what it's worth, Will Cunningham, former K-Country director who was Newman's supervisor, the one who in 2003 recommended he be fired, said that he believes the camp has not come clean about past abuse. Joe White's continued lack of transparency, by not publicly admitting he knew of Newman's nudity when he did, prolongs the pain and anger of Pete's victims, Cunningham said. In contrast, Joe White wrote an open letter to victims saying that you may feel that you cannot share your story out of fear of legal consequences. If this is you, know that Kanakuk and I will not object to you sharing your story with those who can support your healing. The freedom to tell your story should not be a question, and to us, it's not. I am opposed to any legal maneuver or action meant to suppress the voice of victims. Since most agreements involve insurance companies who may choose to defend their interests, you should keep the terms of your settlement confidential. I humbly plead for an opportunity for personal reconciliation and forgiveness. Please get in touch with me at jwhite@Kanakuk if you would be willing to meet with me face-to-face with an end goal of reconciliation. I will continue to pray for healing, restoration, and a reconciled peace that only God can give. Sincerely, Joe White. Yeah, I don't think I trust you, Joe. All right, so this child protection plan developed in 2009 because of the incidents. They brag all day long about having the most comprehensive plan. It has more checks than, is even required. But it's not public, like all these checks or like who they go through or who's vetting this process. Oh, wow. Their child safety plan was endorsed by John Ashcroft, a former United States Attorney General under the George W. Bush administration. He was also the Attorney General of Missouri, the Governor of Missouri, and a United States Senator. His son is Jay Ashcroft, who also sucks, and he just lost the primary. He lost the governor primary to Mike Kehoe, who is a famous car salesman from Missouri. I can't do this anymore. A former Pizza Hut manager and insurance salesman, Brashler travels the country sharing and selling this plan to churches, schools, sports programs, and other camps based off of firsthand experience failing to protect children. What? Did I read that correctly? Yes, I did read that correctly. The program is called What Did I Learn and Create After Catching a Child Molester? Which, by the way, he didn't catch shit because he was the child safety guy in 2003. And guess what else was happening in 2003? And also, Lee Bradbury, another convicted sex offender that was working at Kanakuk, was arrested in 2011 after the protection plan had been implemented. This protection plan, by the way, has been reviewed by a third party, and they think it's a complete piece of garbage. And this Rick Brashler dude was hired to work for Circuitry, which is another Kanakuk entity that has had its name changed a bunch of times.
I graduated high school at John F. Hodge High School in St. James, Missouri. I attended Anderson College in Anderson, Indiana for 2 years, and that's the extent of my formal education.
Have you had any specialized training or education after you completed your work at Anderson College?
I've taken a series of trainings vocationally through restaurant management school with the Pizza Hut franchise organization, completing their management training. I received a certification in risk management through a certifying group in 2002.
With your work at Anderson College, did you receive a 2-year degree?
No, I did not.
What were you studying during your 2 years at Anderson?
Bible and religion.
Yeah, I really want this Pizza Hut manager turned insurance broker and Bible school dropout in charge of my camp's child safety plan. Are you kidding me? Oh my God, they have proof. Bless you, Facts About Kanakuk. This is incredible that they have compiled all this stuff. Yeah, literally, they have the fucking PowerPoint that he did. No, this is unbelievable. What? He's saying, he's using the Pete Newman thing to be like, look what I learned. Oh my God. He's literally talking about NAMBLA in this. I'm gonna fucking lose it. He's showing the process of grooming? The 4 protection zones? What? These videos that they show, they're all the same video, basically. Even though they have different ones for different groups. And they have some stuff that's like normal and understandable. No gossiping, no bullying, no fighting, no touching, no cell phones, no sitting or lying on someone else's bed. Always report behavior to a counselor or a nurse, which the nurse was good because they're mandated reporters. They also have an anonymous like tip drop-off box if somebody's too afraid to talk to somebody in person. But the thing that I found the most disturbing in this safety video aimed at little evangelical children at camp is that they bring up modesty as a way to prevent abuse. Sound familiar?
The first boundary is modesty matters. Here at camp, everybody's private body parts should be covered at all times around others. In the cabin, on trips, and even getting ready for shower period. At no time will we ever display private body parts to one another or touch someone else's body. Modesty matters because it's the best way and the safe way.
The second boundary is make it public. Here at camp, you should never be alone with a counselor, staff member, or even alone with another camper where others are not present. Always stay where staff can see you or interrupt you if needed. If you do find yourself where others are not present, then just make sure at least 2 other people are with you.
I guess I don't hate the rule that you can't be by yourself or be alone with a counselor. That didn't seem to matter in 2016 when a camper was assaulted at Kanakuk by another camper in public during one of their big parties. And when she reported it to the director, Keith Chansey, he made her apologize to the boy and said, "We believe in salvation. We don't believe in punishment. Jesus forgives, and we are going to forgive this camper. We're going to help him with his problems." Without warning, the boy was brought into the meeting for forced reconciliation, and Chansey wanted her to apologize to the boy for making the accusation. She then accused the boy of lying in the eyes of the Lord, and Keith Chansey said, "We're not bringing the Lord into this." She was not allowed to call home or go home after this. Not unless you're injured, she was told. In addition to limiting phone calls, a Kanakuk employee playbook instructed staff to intercept letters with negative or distressing information to prevent misleading information from causing undue panic at home. Even from a safety perspective, how horrifying is that to hear as a parent? Like, that your child will not be able to contact you and that they're censoring their mail. In conclusion, I have not felt this, like, heartbroken and upset by a video in a long time. Kanakuk really takes the cake when it comes to horrible, abusive institutions from Missouri that need to be stopped. This is overt, horrific abuse that is very clear to me, and I am so mad for the parents who have been lied to and the parents that have no idea about this abuse because of Kanakuk's clever marketing and campaign of hidden information and silencing victims and lawsuits, and like there's just this trail of abuse. They had over a dozen sex offenders at one time or another interacting with kids. You've got Pete Newman, who was promoted over and over again despite leadership knowing exactly what kind of a monster he was. It's just shocking and appalling. Like, I just can't believe that this is happening. And in my home state, I went to school with kids who may have gone through this. Like, I'm so fucking upset for them. Camp is supposed to be fun, and this is supposed to be a Christian environment. They're supposed to be held to a higher standard. Instead, they're consistently given extra leniency. Now that they're a church and they don't have to pay taxes, the governor letting them have special clearance to have camp during COVID, the link year programs getting special academic circumstances because they're a religious school. Like, it's rampant. There's no separation of church and state here. We don't have abortion access or health care for trans people. The social services cut before everything else. It really is like the government in Missouri is trying to kill everyone. Like, they hate us. Like, it's fucked up, and Kanakuk is just absolutely proof of that. And I'm from a more, like, liberal area of the state, and even then it's like, it's really red, and it's just hard. Like, when I go down to southern Missouri, like, it's nuts, like, how many mega churches there are, how many of these big, like, empires there are down there. Like, obviously the people in charge should change, not the people shouldn't have to leave or change themselves. Just broken over all this. Like, this is so fucked up. I mean, that's just the sexual abuse. The racism is horrible. The fact that the camp is just blatantly culturally appropriating indigenous people and their culture, the segregated camps, exploitation of link year, it's just horrible, and it doesn't have to be this way. Like, set up, and they have the means to give kids the best summer ever, but instead they're a literal playground for pedophiles and child abusers. Like, the first time they should have shut down or changed leadership or done something, but they let it go and they continued to sweep it under the rug, and now how many more people were abused because they didn't take action the first time they heard about Pete Newman doing this stuff. And what the fuck does Pete have on them that he kept getting promoted? There were people in leadership who did not like him and wanted him to be fired. Like, what is Joe's deal? Why is this happening? Kanakuk is a lot, and it's really upsetting, and it's really hard to talk about, but it's very important because there are so many people that were hurt and abused, and this place just gets to continue operating like nothing happened. And they get special privileges all the time. For what reason? The sheer massive amount of information covered up in the name of protecting the Kanakuk brand is disgusting. No Christian organization should have that much money. It's kind of counterintuitive to the values of the religion. I am sickened by the relentless, unwavering support for gross sexual abusers, and in kind the grotesque spiritual manipulation and shame laid at the feet of those who survived. The arrogance to continue parading around like a pious paragon of the Branson community. The audacity to pivot itself towards a lucrative new business in the world of high school basketball, utilizing all of Kanakuk's resources to exploit an army of Division I disciples built up in the brand's image while simultaneously sidestepping or just flat out ignoring the decades of abuse and controversy that litter the camp's legacy. The fact is, at best, Kanakuk is nothing more than a racism-laden sports camp with a bent towards the evangelical right wing of American politics and an uncomfortably capitalistic approach to the whole concept of Christianity in general. But the thing that really got me, the cold hard fact that I went to school with so many of the kids that they exploited. I may never have attended the camp myself, but I grew up in Kanakuk country. More than anywhere else in the world, I heard tales of the camp whispered across the halls of my school, straight from the mouths of those who went there. I saw the backpacks and the t-shirts and the hats in my own school hallway, and I had no idea that this was going on. A lot of people didn't. A lot of people were afraid to say anything. A lot of people spoke up and nothing was done. I had no idea that this organization emblazoning its logo on every young Missourian it could was at the same time making victims out of so many of those same children. I had no idea that instead of bettering itself and purging the victimizers from its ranks, Kanakuk would instead develop a system of abuser protection so comprehensive and so effective that even the camp's own neighbors, parents, and counselors would have no idea what was going on under their noses. And that has turned me into a very, very angry Missourian. I found myself battling and channeling my own anger towards the situation as I worked to try and prepare this episode like I never have before. The hard nights and hard stories were unusually hard, but at the end of it all, I can't tell you how good it feels to signal boost this very important story. Put as simply as I can, Kanakuk does not deserve its success that it has as an organization. It doesn't deserve all that stolen land. It doesn't deserve all the millions of dollars and celebrity endorsements. The Kanakuk organization has so egregiously failed its campers, its parents, and its staff for decades now, that if not for their ties to the ever-insular and self-protecting American evangelical right wing, it likely wouldn't exist anymore. I can only hope that my video will contribute to that vision of a Missouri without Kanakuk. Maybe one day that land will be a public park or something. All right. What an episode. I don't know how long it is now after editing. I have filmed over 8 hours now. Shout out James for getting me a energy drink in the middle of it, because I was definitely losing my mind and I was very sleepy. Yeah, this video has been a labor of love, as difficult and like traumatizing as this stuff is. It was very important to me that the story get told, and very important that the survivors' stories were highlighted and that they get a voice, because so many of them legally aren't allowed to speak out, so we have to do it for them. Facts about Kanakuk. Damn, they were killing it. Everything you ever could possibly need to know about the Kanakuk organization and all of the lawsuits and how to help, it's all on there. And so many local journalists, like all these places they talk about, like I recognize them, like I know what they're talking about. Yeah, so thanks again to all the Jedi who reached out and told me about their experience. It was very helpful, and just thank you to everybody who's ever advocated for these people. It's really fucking hard and really scary. You guys are so brave, and I'm so proud of you. That's the end of the video. Feels weird promoting myself after this, so I won't. Follow the links in the info box. You'll find stuff if you want more of me or you want to support me. It's down there. You know what to do. I've talked about it a million times. James has a video coming out soon. As you've noticed, some months we get like 5 videos out, and some it takes a couple weeks. And so James is supposed to have a video about Project 2025 coming up here pretty soon, but shit happens, so that's the goal. The goal is that. And then next month I have the highly requested topics is coming in October, because it's Halloween, so I always do like extra special episodes, and so I'm excited for that. Join our community for all kinds of good stuff. I love you guys, and you're amazing, and I will see you soon. I love you very much. God bless, and good night. So cute. What's up, Pippi? What you got to say? I love you. You want down? Of course you want down after you asked to be picked up.